open your eyes, and there it is. A rock. A great, flat-topped rock rising out of the earth, like something the land itself decided to lift up toward the sky. The light around it is soft and golden, the kind of light that feels like it belongs to early morning, or maybe to the very beginning of time. The air is warm and still, and you are standing at the edge of a wide, open plain, looking up at this rock, and something in you recognizes it. Something old and quiet inside you says yes. This place. Welcome. Come and sit with me for a while. We are going on a very long journey together. A slow one, a gentle one, across thousands of years, through one of the most layered, most storied cities the world has ever known. We are going to Athens, and we are going to start right at the very beginning. Not the Athens of marble temples and famous philosophers. Not yet. We are going much further back than that. Back to a time when there were no names for anything. No city. No streets. Just this rock, and the land around it, and the people who first looked up at it and decided to stay. Close your eyes for a moment, or let them go soft. Let the world around you settle. Now breathe. You are somewhere around 7,000 years ago. The plain stretches out around you, wide and dry and golden. There are low hills in the distance, hazy and blue. The air smells of dry grass and something faintly herbal, wild thyme, maybe, crushed underfoot somewhere nearby. The sun is warm on your arms, not harsh, just present, steady. And that rock is still there, rising up, watching. We call it the Acropolis now, but that word came much, much later. In these earliest days, it had no name that we know of. It was simply the high place, and high places matter. They always have. You can see further from them. You can feel the wind more clearly. You can watch the plain below for movement. Animals, strangers, weather coming in from the sea. The sea, you can almost sense it, even from here. A faint coolness carried on the breeze from the south and west. The Aegean is not far, and that matters too. Water, height, and open land. These are the things that draw people. These are the things that say, stay here, build here. This is a good place to be. And so they did. The earliest traces of human life in this area go back to around 7,000 years before the Common Era. Small groups of people, farmers and herders mostly. They kept goats and sheep. They grew a little grain. They made simple pottery, round-bellied pots with rough surfaces, warm from the kiln, holding water or oil or dried seeds. If you ran your finger along the rim of one of those pots, you would feel the small imperfections left by human hands. Real hands. Working hands. They settled on the slopes of the Acropolis and in the land around it. They built small shelters. They buried their dead nearby, which tells us something important. You bury your dead where you intend to stay, where you feel you belong. These were not grand people, in the way we sometimes imagine ancient people to be. They were ordinary. They woke up tired sometimes. They worried about rain. They watched their children sleep and felt that particular quiet love that has no name in any language. They looked up at the stars and wondered. They sat by small fires in the evening and listened to the night sounds, crickets, wind, the distant call of an owl. And slowly, over generations, over centuries, this place began to hold them. The rock above, the plain below, the sea breeze, the thyme, the clay soil that could be shaped into something useful, something lasting. A city was not yet even a thought, but a home was beginning, And that is where we start. Right here, in this quiet, ordinary, extraordinary beginning. If this kind of story feels like something you want to carry with you through all 40 parts, all the way from these first footsteps to the living city that Athens is today, then stay with me, like this video, and subscribe, so the next part finds its way to you gently, without you having to go looking for it. For now, just rest here a moment longer. The rock is still there above you. The air is warm, and something is just beginning. The wind moves quietly over the hill tonight. You can hear it, a low, soft breath passing through the dry grass, bending each blade just slightly before letting it rise again. It is the kind of sound that makes you feel like the land itself is breathing, slowly, steadily, the way it has always breathed. That stone tool still rests where you last saw it, catching a pale thread of moonlight. But now you begin to notice something more. The hill is not just a hill. Beneath your feet, if you press them gently to the earth, you might feel a faint solidity, a density that does not quite belong to ordinary ground. Something was built here, something was shaped here, long before memory could hold it. This is the rock that will one day be called the Acropolis. But right now, in this deep and distant time, it is simply a high place. And high places matter. They always have. Around 1600 BCE, a people we now call the Mycenaeans began to spread their influence across the Greek world. They were not soft or quiet. They built with heavy stone. They kept careful records on clay tablets. They traded across the sea, copper from Cyprus, tin from distant lands, oil and grain, and fine painted pottery, moving back and forth across the blue water. You can almost smell it, that blend of salt air and warm olive wood that must have filled every harbor, every loading dock, every merchant's hand. On this particular hill, there are traces, faint but real, of Mycenaean presence. Walls, cisterns cut into the rock to hold water through long, dry summers. The kind of careful, practical work that speaks of people who planned ahead, people who looked at a high rocky outcrop and saw not just shelter, but strength. Mycenaean culture had its palaces, great centers like Mycenae and Tyrants, with their massive stone walls so enormous that later Greeks would look at them and whisper that giants must have built them. They called this style Cyclopean masonry, named for the Cyclops, because no ordinary human hand seemed capable of lifting stones so large. If you could reach out and touch one of those ancient blocks right now, you would feel the rough, cool surface, the weight of it pressing back against your palm, solid and unyielding as time itself. The Mycenaeans had kings. They had scribes who pressed tiny symbols into wet clay. They had gods they prayed to, though the names and shapes of those gods were still shifting, still becoming. They had stories too, stories that would travel forward through centuries, changing shape as they moved, until they became the myths we still know today. The great wandering hero. The city besieged for years across the water. The clever woman waiting at her loom. These stories were not yet written down. They lived in the mouth, passed from voice to voice around a fire, carried in the chest like something warm. Here on this hill, the air at night carries a faint trace of wood smoke. Somewhere below, in the settlement that clusters around the base of the rock, a fire is burning low. Someone is awake, a child perhaps, or a guard, or simply a person who cannot sleep and has chosen to sit with the darkness for a while. The fire gives off a soft crackling sound, irregular, gentle, and the smell of it drifts upward, cedar and something earthier underneath. The Mycenaean world was not simple. It had its tensions, its hierarchies, its long supply chains that could break without warning. Scholars still debate exactly what happened when this world eventually came apart, and it did come apart, slowly, and then all at once. Sometime around 1100 BCE, the palaces fell quiet. The writing stopped. The trade routes frayed. Historians call this the Bronze Age collapse, though no one is entirely certain what caused it. Perhaps drought, perhaps invasion, perhaps something more complicated, the way most endings are. But that unraveling is still far ahead. Right now, the hill stands firm. The walls hold. The water in the cistern is cool and still. And the stories, the ones that will eventually become Athens, become democracy, become philosophy, become so much of what the world still carries. Those stories are just beginning to take shape. You breathe in slowly. The night air is dry and faintly sweet. The moonlight rests on the stone like a hand placed gently on a shoulder. The hill is patient. It has always been patient. It will wait for what comes next. The smell comes first. It is wood smoke, thin and pale, drifting from somewhere beyond the ridge. Not the rich, cedar-scented smoke of a great hall, something smaller. A cooking fire. A family fire. The kind that asks for nothing more than warmth and a handful of grain. You are still here, on this hill above the plain, but something has changed. The great stones are quieter now. The painted walls you glimpsed before, the ones bright with blue and red, and the careful lines of scribes, they are fading. Not all at once, slowly, the way a dream fades when morning comes too gently to notice. This is Athens after the great palaces, after the Bronze Age has loosened its grip and let go. Historians call it the Dark Age, and that name carries a kind of heaviness. But standing here, breathing in that thin wood smoke, you sense it is not entirely dark. It is more like dusk, the kind of dusk where you can still see shapes, still feel the ground beneath your feet, still hear someone moving in the next room. The Mycenaean world, that world of palace records and bronze weapons and long-distance trade, it has come apart. Slowly, over generations. The reasons are still not entirely clear, even now. Drought, perhaps. Movement of peoples. The slow unraveling of complex systems that had grown too fragile to hold. But people remain. On the Acropolis, that great flat-topped rock rising above everything, there are still people. Not kings with scribes and storerooms full of grain. Smaller communities now. Quieter ones. They build in wood and mud brick, not in the massive stone blocks of the age before. Their homes are modest. Their possessions are fewer. You imagine touching the wall of one of these simple structures. The mud brick is cool and slightly rough under your fingertips. It crumbles a little at the edge, where the rain has reached it. It is not built to last 1,000 years. It is built to last a winter. And yet, something continues. The Acropolis is still a place people return to. That matters. When everything else shifts and dissolves, the hill remains. The rock remains. And people keep coming back to it, which tells you something quiet and important, that this place already means something. That meaning does not need a palace to survive. You can hear, faintly, the sound of a child somewhere below. A small voice, calling out in a language that is already moving toward what will one day become Greek. The words are not clear, but the tone is familiar, ordinary. A child looking for someone. Life, in its smallest and most persistent form. The pottery of this period is something to notice if you look carefully. The painted designs grow simpler at first. Geometric, careful circles and lines and repeated patterns, drawn with a steady hand. There is a kind of honesty in this simplicity. No grand scenes of warriors or gods yet. Just pattern. Just the quiet pleasure of a line meeting another line and making something whole. Archaeologists have found these vessels. They tell us that craft did not disappear. Skill did not disappear. The knowledge of how to shape clay, how to fire it, how to make something useful and also beautiful. That knowledge passed from hand to hand, generation to generation, even through the quiet centuries. The smell of wood smoke is still with you. And now, underneath it, something else. The faint green smell of wild herbs growing between the stones. Thyme, perhaps. Or something like it. The kind of plant that needs almost nothing to survive and returns every spring regardless. That is what this time feels like. Not an ending. Not a darkness without any light at all. But a returning to something essential. A stripping away of complexity until only the necessary things remain. The hill. The fire. The family. The careful hand drawing a circle on a piece of clay. Athens is not yet Athens, not in the way you know it. There are no temples yet. No agora. No philosophers walking in the afternoon shade. All of that is still far ahead, sleeping somewhere in the future, like a seed that has not yet felt the warmth of spring. But the seed is here. You breathe in the wood smoke again. You feel the night air, cool against your face. Somewhere on this ancient hill, a small fire glows, and you find yourself wondering, quietly, without urgency, who is sitting beside it. The smoke drifts upward, thin and pale, and you reach out a hand toward the warmth of that hearth. The heat touches your palm first, a dry, gentle pressure, like a breath held close. The stone around the fire is rough beneath your fingertips. Old stone. Stone that has been here longer than anyone can quite remember. And yet, something is changing. You can feel it in the air itself. Not just the warmth of one fire now, but the warmth of many. The hillside that was once quiet and scattered is slowly filling in. More hearths, more hands shaping clay, more voices carried on the evening wind. This is how a city begins. Not with a single great moment, not with a proclamation or a trumpet call. It begins like this, with people choosing, again and again, to stay close to one another. Athens in these centuries is still a modest place by any measure. The grand marble temples you might imagine, those are still far in the future. But something important is already happening here on the rock and the slopes below it. A shape is forming, a sense of belonging to a place, to a people, to something larger than one family or one fire. The Greeks have a word for it. Polis. You have probably heard it before. We often translate it simply as city-state, but that doesn't quite capture the feeling. A polis is not just a place. It is a way of living together. It is an agreement, unspoken but deeply felt, that these people and this land belong to each other. And Athens is becoming one. You walk a little further along the slope. The ground is uneven beneath your feet, dry earth, loose pebbles, the occasional flat stone worn smooth by years of passing feet. The path is not grand. It is just a path, but it leads somewhere now. It leads toward the rock, toward the high place, toward what will slowly become the sacred heart of the city. On the Acropolis above, the earliest temples are beginning to take shape. Not in marble, not yet. These first sacred structures are made of wood and mud brick and thatch. They are humble things, honestly. You might walk past one without quite recognizing what it was. But inside, or just before the entrance, there would be a figure, a cult image, a presence, and people would come to leave offerings, small clay figures, a little oil, a handful of grain, the smell of that grain, warmed by the sun and left on a stone ledge, is something simple and real. It is the smell of ordinary people reaching towards something they cannot fully name. Athena is already here, in a sense, not yet in the great temple that will one day crown the hill, but in the feeling people carry when they climb toward the high place, in the way they pause before they speak her name. She is the city's protector, and the city is beginning to understand what that means, that a shared goddess is also a shared identity. Down below, the agora is not yet the open civic space it will one day become, but there are gathering places. There are spots where people meet to trade a little, to settle a dispute, to simply stand together in the cooling air of late afternoon. You can hear the low murmur of those conversations, not the words, just the sound. The sound of people working things out. A dog trots past you on the path, unbothered, nose low to the ground. Somewhere nearby, someone is cooking something over a small fire, lentils, maybe, or barley softened in water. The smell is plain and filling. It is the smell of enough. Not abundance, just enough. And that is what this moment really is, you think. Not triumph, not greatness, just enough. Enough people, enough shared purpose, enough quiet agreement to become something together. The sun is lower now. The shadows on the hillside are long and soft. The stone of the Acropolis above you catches the last light and holds it, just for a moment, in a warm amber glow. You sit down on flat rock and let the day settle around you. The city is not yet the city it will become, but the shape of it is here. The feeling of it is here. People are choosing this place. They are choosing each other. And in that choosing, something old becomes something new. The smoke from the hearth below has thinned to almost nothing now, but the warmth it left behind still lingers in the air. There is something bitter on the back of your tongue. Not unpleasant exactly. More like the taste of air before a storm, dry and sharp, and full of something waiting. You are standing near the edge of the agora, and the evening is settling in around you. The stones beneath your feet are still warm from the day's sun, holding the heat the way bread holds warmth long after it leaves the fire. Athens is changing. You can feel it in the way people gather now. Not just to trade grain or oil or cloth. They gather to talk, to argue, to ask questions that have no easy answers. Who owns this land? Who decides what is fair? What happens when a man wrongs his neighbor and there is no one to judge between them? For a long time, those questions were answered by whoever was strongest, by the man with the most land, the most men, the most gold. Justice was personal. It lived in the hands of the powerful, and it bent the way the powerful wanted it to bend. But something has shifted. You hear it in the voices around you, a low, restless murmur, like water moving under ice. The ordinary people, the farmers, the craftsmen, the men who carry things and build things and grow things, they are tired. Tired of debts they cannot repay. Tired of laws they cannot read, because the laws have never been written down at all. And then, sometime around the late 600s, a man named Draco changes that. You can almost feel the weight of what he does. He takes the unwritten customs, the old habits of judgment, and he puts them into words. He carves them into wood and stone, and sets them where anyone can see them. For the first time in Athens, the law is something you can point to, something that exists outside the mind of any single powerful man. The taste in your mouth sharpens, because Draco's laws are hard. Famously hard. Almost everything is punishable by death. Stealing a cabbage, sleeping in the wrong place, owing a debt you cannot pay. Later people will say his laws were written not in ink but in blood. And there is something true in that, even if it is also a little unkind. But here is the thing. Even harsh laws, written down and visible, are a kind of progress. Because now the law belongs to everyone who can read it. It is no longer a secret kept by the powerful. It is a shared thing, a public thing. And that matters more than you might first imagine. You run your fingers along the edge of a low stone wall. The surface is rough and cool. The city smells of wood smoke and dried herbs and the faint sweetness of pressed olives from somewhere nearby. Then comes Solon. He arrives like a long exhale after a held breath. Around 594 BCE, the Athenians choose him as a special magistrate, an archon, and give him something remarkable. They give him the power to rewrite the rules, not just adjust them, rewrite them. And Solon does something that surprises almost everyone. He cancels the debts, not some of the debts, all of them. The practice was called the sisastia, the shaking off of burdens. Farmers who had pledged their bodies as collateral, who faced slavery if they could not repay what they owed, were suddenly free of that weight. The stones marking their debt-pledged land were pulled up and thrown aside. You can almost hear the silence that follows a thing like that, the held breath of a city trying to understand what has just happened. Solon also reorganizes who can participate in Athenian public life. He divides citizens into classes based on how much grain or oil their land produces. Even the lowest class gains some rights, some voice, some small place in the assembly. It is not democracy. Not yet. That word and that idea are still a generation away. But it is something. A door, opened just a crack, letting in a thin line of light. The wood smoke drifts past you now, soft and grey. Somewhere a dog is barking, then quiet. The agora empties slowly as the last of the evening traders pack up their things and head home through the narrow streets. Athens is not yet what it will become, but it is becoming. Slowly, unevenly, with arguments and setbacks and moments of unexpected grace. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, the idea is taking root, quiet as a seed in dark soil, that law might belong to everyone. The scrolls lie open on a low wooden table. You can see the ink marks clearly in the lamplight, thin, careful lines pressed into the papyrus. Someone has been reading here recently. The oil lamp flickers just slightly, and the shadows on the wall shift and breathe. This is Athens in the time of Pisistratos, and it is a strange, complicated time. He was called a tyrant, but that word, back then, did not carry quite the weight it carries now. A tyrant simply meant a man who had seized power outside the usual rules. Not always cruel, not always feared. Sometimes, in fact, surprisingly gentle. Pisistratos first took control of Athens around 561 BCE. He was clever. He was charming. He understood people, what they needed, what they wanted to believe. He rose to power not once, but 3 times. Twice he was pushed out. Twice he came back. The 3rd time he stayed. You can almost feel the texture of the city he shaped. The stones underfoot are uneven and cool. The air carries the smell of fresh-cut timber, because Pisistratos was building. He expanded the great festival of Panathenea, a celebration in honor of Athena, the city's protector. He brought poets and musicians to Athens. He encouraged the recitation of Homer's epics, those long sweeping poems about Troy and heroes and the long road home. Imagine sitting in the open air, the evening warm against your arms, listening to a voice carry those ancient words across a crowd of hundreds. The sound of it rises and falls like water. People around you are still. Even the children are quiet. This was part of what Pisistratos understood. Culture could bind a city together. Shared stories could make people feel they belonged to something larger than themselves. He also paid attention to the farmers outside the city walls. He gave loans to struggling families. He sent traveling judges out to the countryside so that ordinary people did not have to walk all the way to Athens just to settle a dispute. The smell of the olive groves, the dry dust of the rural roads, these places mattered to him, or at least he made them feel that way. His sons, Hippias and Hipparchus, took over after his death around 527 BCE. For a while, the city continued much as before, but the mood slowly changed. Power that had felt steady began to feel tight. Hipparchus was assassinated in 514 BCE, a moment of violence that shook everything. Hippias grew suspicious and harsh. The warmth that had existed under his father began to cool. You can sense it, a kind of stillness that is not peaceful, the kind of quiet that comes when people are careful about what they say. By 510 BCE, Hippias was driven out of Athens with help from Sparta. And then something remarkable began to happen. Not all at once, not cleanly, but a man named Cleisthenes started to reshape the city in a way that had never quite been tried before. He reorganized the tribes of Athens. He broke up the old groupings that had kept powerful families in control for generations. He created a new council, 500 men drawn from across the city and its surrounding regions. Not just the wealthy, not just the well-connected, ordinary men, farmers, craftsmen, people who had never held power before. Touch the idea of it for a moment. A man who grew olives outside the city walls, his hands rough and stained, sitting in a council chamber and having a say in how Athens was governed. That was new. That was genuinely new. Cleisthenes also introduced a practice called ostracism. Once a year, citizens could vote to send a person into exile for 10 years, not as punishment for a crime, but simply to prevent any one person from becoming too powerful. They scratched names onto broken pieces of pottery called ostraka, the scrape of the shard against stone, a name written in the dust of democracy. By around 508 BCE, these reforms were taking shape. Athens was not yet what we would call a full democracy. There were still limits, still exclusions. Women, slaves, foreigners, they had no voice in any of this. The story is not simple or clean, but something had shifted. You can feel it in the city's texture, in the way people moved through the agora, in the conversations that were now possible. The scrolls on the table, the ones you noticed at the start, they hold some of this. Words about law, about assembly, about who gets to speak. Someone left them open on purpose. The agora is quiet now, but not silent. You can hear it if you listen carefully. A low murmur, like water finding its way through stone. Voices drifting from doorways. A man arguing softly with his neighbor. Someone laughing, then stopping. The city is thinking out loud, even in the dark. The lanterns still flicker across the open square. Their light catches the edge of a column, the curve of a clay pot, the sandal of a man who stopped walking and hasn't started again. He's just standing there, looking at nothing, or maybe looking at everything. It's hard to tell the difference in Athens these days. Something is changing. You can feel it in the air, the way you feel a season turning. Not all at once, but in small, undeniable moments. The man at the center of this change is named Cleisthenes. He comes from a powerful family, the Alcmaeonidae, and he has known politics his whole life. He has seen what power does to people. He has seen tyrants rise and fall. He has watched the city hold its breath under Pisistratos and his sons. And now, in the year 508, with the tyrant Hippias finally gone, Cleisthenes is doing something that no one has quite done before. He is giving the city back to its people. Not all the people. Not yet. Women, enslaved people, foreigners, they are still outside the circle. History moves slowly, and this is still its early morning. But for the free men of Athens, what Cleisthenes is building feels extraordinary. He calls it isonomia, equal law, equal standing before the rules that govern everyone. You sit down on a low stone step near the edge of the agora. The stone is cool under your hands, smooth from years of people doing exactly what you're doing now. Resting, thinking, watching. A dog trots past without looking at you. Somewhere nearby, bread is baking. The smell of it is warm and plain and comforting, like something that has always been here. Cleisthenes begins by redrawing the map of Athens. Not the physical map, the hills and harbors stay where they are, but the political map, the invisible one that tells people where they belong and who they belong to, that he reshapes entirely. Before him, Athenian society was organized around old family clans. Your tribe was your blood. Your blood was your loyalty. Powerful families used this to control votes, to pull people in directions that served the few. Cleisthenes breaks this apart, gently but completely. He creates 10 new tribes. But these tribes are not built from bloodlines. They are built from geography, from demes, small local communities scattered across Attica. Each new tribe draws members from 3 different regions: the city, the coast, and the inland areas. A farmer from the hills might now share a tribe with a fisherman from the shore and a craftsman from the city streets. This is not an accident. It is a design. A careful, thoughtful dismantling of old loyalties. You imagine the conversations this must have started. Men who had never spoken to each other, suddenly sharing a tribe, sharing a vote, sharing a responsibility to show up, to speak, to decide. The assembly, the acacia, is where this happens. Any male citizen can come. Any male citizen can speak. The hill called the Nyx, just west of the Acropolis, becomes the place where voices gather. You can almost picture it. Hundreds of men climbing that slope in the early morning, the city spread out below them, the sea glinting in the distance, the smell of dust and wool and morning air. They vote on laws, on war, on who should lead. Not a king, not a tyrant. Them. There is also a new council, the Bull, 500 men chosen by lot from the 10 tribes. Chosen by chance, not by wealth or family name, by a small clay token drawn from a jar. Think about what that means. Ordinary men. Men with calloused hands and sun-darkened faces. Men who have spent their lives growing olives or shaping pots or pulling nets from the sea. These men now sit in council and help run a city. It is imperfect. It is incomplete. But it is something the world has not quite seen before. The lanterns in the agora burn a little lower. The murmuring voices drift and fade. Somewhere on the Nyx, the wind moves through the empty stone benches, and you wonder, quietly, almost without meaning to, what it felt like to be the first man to stand up and speak. The air smells of dust and dry grass. That particular smell of late summer in Attica, warm and a little sharp, like the earth has been baking slowly for months and is only now beginning to cool. You breathe it in. It settles something in you. Even now, even after everything. The pebble has fallen. The vote is done. And somewhere, in that small, uncertain sound, a decision has been made that will echo for a very long time. The Athenian generals have chosen to fight, not to wait behind walls, not to send desperate messages and hope someone comes, to march out and meet the Persian army on the plain of Marathon, about 40 kilometers north of the city, 40 kilometers of rocky road and dry hills, and at the end of it, an enemy force that has already taken islands, already burned cities, already made other Greek towns kneel without a fight. It is the autumn of 490 BCE, and Athens is about to do something that almost no one expects. You can imagine the night before the battle. The soldiers, the hoplites, the citizen soldiers of Athens, lying on the ground, wrapped in their cloaks. The wool is rough against the skin. The night air has a chill to it now, the kind that creeps in after the sun goes down in September. Around them, the plain is quiet. The sea is not far. You can almost hear it, a faint low sound beneath the silence. These are not professional soldiers, not entirely. They are farmers and craftsmen and merchants. Men who own their own armor, because owning armor means you matter in this city. The bronze breastplate, the heavy round shield, the long spear. They have trained for this, yes. But training and the real thing are very different feelings. And yet, they sleep, or some of them do. In the morning, they form their lines. The generals arrange the Athenian force carefully, thinner in the center, stronger on the wings. It is a deliberate choice, a considered shape. When the battle begins, the wings will push forward and curve inward, wrapping around the Persian flanks like two arms closing. The run itself becomes legendary. The Athenians advance at a jog, then faster, closing the distance quickly to reduce the time they spend under Persian arrows. The sound of it must have been extraordinary. Thousands of sandaled feet on dry ground, the clatter of shields and spears, the breath of men running towards something they cannot fully see yet. And then the lines meet. The center holds, barely. The wings succeed. The Persians, caught from both sides, begin to break. They fall back toward their ships on the beach. The battle is fierce and close and loud, and then, somehow, it is over. The numbers that come down to us say Athens lost 192 men. The Persians lost thousands. Whether those exact numbers are perfectly accurate, we cannot say for certain. But the shape of the outcome is clear. Athens won, decisively, against an empire. Afterward, they say a runner was sent to carry the news back to the city. The story of Phidippides running all the way to Athens, gasping out the word for victory, and then collapsing. That story has grown and changed over centuries. The details are uncertain. The feeling behind it, that urgency, that desperate need to say, we are safe, we did it. That part feels true. You think about what this moment does to a city. Athens has been a democracy for less than 20 years at this point. It is still new, still finding its shape, and now it has this, a victory, won not by a king, not by a tyrant, but by citizens, men who voted and argued, and then picked up their shields and fought together. That changes something, not loudly, not all at once, But quietly, the way confidence grows, slowly, in small increments, like warmth returning to cold hands. The city will remember Marathon for generations. It will become the story Athens tells about itself. The proof that something new and strange and democratic can hold its ground. You let that settle with you now. The smell of dust and sea air. The quiet after something enormous. The feeling of a city breathing out, just a little, for the first time in a long while. The plain of Marathon is still tonight. The stars are out, and somewhere in Athens, someone is lighting a lamp in a window, waiting for news that is already on its way. The salt is still on your skin. You can feel it, that faint tightness across your cheeks, the way the air from the plain has dried everything it touched. The memory of Marathon lingers not just in the mind but in the body, in the muscles, in the quiet ache of something survived. But Athens does not stay still for long, and there is one man who understands this better than anyone. His name is Themistocles, and if you were to meet him on the street of Athens right now, somewhere around 483 BCE, you might not immediately notice him. He is not the tallest man in the agora. He does not carry himself with the easy grace of old aristocratic blood. But watch his eyes. Watch the way they move. He is always thinking. Always 3 steps ahead of the conversation you are currently having with him. He has an idea. A large one. Athens has just discovered something remarkable beneath its soil, or rather, beneath the rocky hills of Laurian to the south. Silver, a rich new vein of it, deep in the earth. The kind of discovery that makes a city pause and ask a simple question. What do we do with this? The obvious answer, the comfortable answer, is to divide it. Share it among the citizens. A small windfall for each household, enough to buy a little extra comfort. A new cloak, perhaps. Some good oil for the lamp. Themistocles says no. He stands before the assembly, the ecclesia, that open gathering of Athenian citizens on the Nix hill, and he makes a different argument. He speaks quietly, the way people do when they are completely certain. He says the silver should build ships, 200 of them, a fleet the likes of which Athens has never seen. You can almost feel the weight of that moment in the air. The crowd shifting, the murmur moving through thousands of men seated on that limestone slope, the city spread below them, the sea glinting faintly in the distance. Ships mean something specific in this world. They mean oarsmen. And oarsmen, in Athens, are not the wealthy. They are the thetes, the lowest class of free citizens. The men who own little, who work with their hands, who have never before been the backbone of anything military. The hoplite soldier needs his own armor, his own spear. That takes money. But a rower needs only his arms, his breath, and the rhythm of the man beside him. Themistocles is doing something quietly revolutionary. He is making the sea the great equalizer. The assembly votes yes. And so the work begins. Down at Piraeus, Athens' harbor, a few miles from the city, the sound of it fills the air before you even arrive. The knock of mallets on timber, the smell of pine resin, warm and sharp, rising from freshly cut wood, men calling to each other across the yard, the creak of rope being tested under tension. You walk among it all and feel the rough grain of a ship's hull under your fingertips. The wood is still pale, not yet darkened by seawater. These are called triremes, long, narrow, elegant in a fierce way. 3 rows of oarsmen on each side. Fast, terrifyingly fast when they are moving together. The shipwrights work through the heat of the day. You can taste the dust in the back of your throat, feel the sun on the back of your neck. Around you, The harbour smells of pitch and fish and salt and effort. And somewhere in all of this, in the noise and the labour and the slow accumulation of 200 hulls, something is shifting in what Athens believes about itself. It has always thought of itself as a land city, a city of farmers and soldiers and thinkers on a rocky plain. But Themistocles is asking it to look outward, to look at the sea not as an edge, but as a road, not as a boundary, but as a possibility. The Persians are coming. Everyone knows it. Darius tried once, a marathon held, but his son Xerxes is already gathering something far larger. The rumors drift in like weather. Enormous, unstoppable, an army that drinks rivers dry, they say. Athens is building its answer out of pine and rope and the strong arms of its poorest citizens. And somewhere out beyond the harbour mouth, the Aegean moves in long, slow swells, grey-green and patient, waiting for what comes next. The taste of salt is everywhere. It sits on your lips, sharp and clean. It coats the back of your throat with every breath you take near the water. You have been here long enough that you barely notice it anymore. It has simply become part of the air, part of the morning, part of who you are in this place and this moment. Your hands still feel the ropes. The roughness lingers in your palms even now. That particular ache that comes from real work, from something that mattered, and the ships are ready. That is the thing you keep returning to. After all the labor, all the pitch and timber, and rope and sweat, the fleet is ready. It is September. The air is still warm during the day, but the nights carry the first cool breath of something changing. You feel it on your arms in the early morning, that gentle reminder that the season is turning. Everything feels like it is on the edge of something. The Persian fleet is enormous. You have heard the numbers spoken in low voices around fires, and the numbers are almost too large to hold in your mind. Hundreds of ships, thousands of men. The sea to the east looks dark with them, and yet the Athenian commanders, Themistocles among them, have chosen this place carefully. The Strait of Salamis. Narrow water, tight and close, where numbers matter less than skill. You find a place to watch from the shore. The ground beneath you is rocky and uneven, and you shift your weight to find your footing. The stone is warm from the sun, even this early. Around you, other people have gathered too. Ordinary people. People who have left their homes, who have carried what they could and come here, waiting. The sound of the battle, when it begins, is nothing like you might have imagined. It is not clean or distant. It is wood cracking against wood, a deep splintering sound that carries across the water. It is shouting in languages you recognize and languages you do not. It is oars churning the surface into white foam. The smell of the sea changes. There is something heavier in it now, something darker beneath the salt. The Greek triremes move differently in this narrow space. You can see it even from the shore. They turn quickly. They strike and pull back. They use the tight channel the way a person uses a small room, with knowledge, with intention. The Persian ships are large and numerous, but here, in this pressed and crowded water, that becomes a problem rather than a strength. They crowd each other. They cannot maneuver. They push against one another like too many people trying to pass through a single doorway. Hours pass. The sun moves across the sky. You do not leave. None of the people around you leave. A woman nearby holds a small piece of bread in her hand and has forgotten to eat it. A child presses close against her side, very quiet, watching. And then, slowly, something shifts. The Persian lines begin to break apart. Ships turn away. Some run aground. The Greek triremes press forward into the gaps, steady and purposeful. The sound changes too. There is still chaos on the water, but beneath it you begin to hear something else. Something that sounds, very distantly, like relief. By the time the light begins to soften toward evening, the strait is quieter. The water is littered with wreckage, with broken oars, with things you try not to look at too closely. But the Greek fleet is still there, still whole, still moving. You sit down on the warm rock and let out a long breath. This one battle will not end everything. You understand that. The Persians will not simply disappear. There will be more fighting, more difficult seasons ahead. History does not resolve itself in a single afternoon. But something has changed today. Something real and lasting. The Greeks have shown that they can hold. That the sea, this particular sea, belongs to people who know it. The salt taste is still on your lips. The evening air is cool now against your skin. Somewhere behind you, someone begins to speak quietly, and then someone else. And the sound of voices slowly fills the shore again. Ordinary voices. People beginning to process what they have witnessed. You look out at the water one more time. The last light catches the surface and turns it gold. The Strait of Salamis is still and almost beautiful now, the way a place can be beautiful after something enormous has passed through it and left it changed. You breathe in the salt air, and you rest. The light changes slowly over the city. You notice it first in the way the marble catches the late afternoon sun, not white exactly, but warm, almost golden. The stone seems to hold the heat inside itself, the way bread holds warmth just after it comes out of the oven. Athens looks different now. Something has shifted. The urgency of those war years, the ships, the smoke, the constant watching of the horizon, that tension has begun to loosen. The city is breathing again, and in that breath, something extraordinary is beginning to grow. You walk up toward the Acropolis. The path is dusty under your sandals, fine pale dust that coats your toes and rises in small clouds with each step. Around you, the city hums. Not with fear this time, with purpose. There are workers everywhere. Men carry stone blocks on wooden sledges. Others chip carefully at marble with iron chisels. And the sound of it, that steady, patient tapping, fills the warm air like a kind of music. Tap, tap, tap. Each strike precise. Each strike adding something to the world rather than taking it away. You stop and watch for a moment. The man closest to you is shaping a column drum. His hands are white with marble dust. He blows gently across the surface, checking the curve, running his fingertips along the edge with the same care a baker uses to feel where the dough has risen properly. He does not look up. He is completely absorbed. There is something peaceful about watching someone work like that, with their whole attention given to one quiet thing. This is the age of Pericles. He is the man who leads Athens now, not as a king, but as a citizen who keeps being chosen, year after year, because people trust him. He is not a soldier in the way that earlier leaders were. He is something else, a builder, a dreamer of a particular kind, the kind who actually makes things happen. And what he wants to make happen is this: a city worthy of what Athens believes about itself. The old temples on the Acropolis were burned by the Persians. You remember that? The smoke, the grief, the long silence afterward. For years, the ruins were left as they were. A reminder, a wound kept open on purpose so no one would forget. But now Pericles has said, it is time to build again. and not just to rebuild what was lost, to build something better, something that will last so long that people will still be looking at it, still wondering at it, long after everyone alive today has turned to dust. The Parthenon. It is not finished yet. You can see the scaffolding, the wooden frames, the ropes and pulleys. You can hear the arguments between craftsmen about the angle of a frieze, the spacing of columns. You can smell the fresh-cut marble, which has a clean, almost mineral scent, cool and faintly sweet, like water from a deep well. Inside the city below, the energy is not only in stone. Playwrights are writing, philosophers are arguing in the shade of colonnades, their voices low and careful, turning ideas over the way you might turn a smooth stone in your hand. Sculptors are working in bronze and marble, trying to capture something true about the human body, not just how it looks, but how it feels to be alive inside one. There is a sense, and you feel it too, just standing here, that something rare is happening. That this city, at this moment, is doing something that cities almost never do. It is asking, what is beautiful? What is good? What does it mean to live well together? These are not easy questions. They will not be answered quickly. Some of them will never be fully answered. But the asking of them, out loud, in public, in stone and song and argument, that itself is something. You sit down on a low wall near the path. The sun is still warm on your arms. Below you, Athens spreads out in the afternoon light. The agora, the houses, the olive trees silvering in a small breeze. A child runs past, laughing at something you cannot see. The tapping of the chisels continues. Steady, patient, building something that does not yet exist. You close your eyes for just a moment and let the sound of it settle over you. That quiet, persistent rhythm of people making something they believe in. It is a sound that asks nothing of you, only that you stay and listen and let it be. The scaffolding sways, and somewhere in that gentle creaking you can almost hear the whole city breathing. Wood against stone, rope against wind, the Acropolis rising, slowly, patiently, into the blue Athenian sky. But then something changes. Not all at once. It never does. It begins as a sound you can't quite place, a low murmur moving through the streets below. Not the usual hum of the agora, not the cheerful noise of potters and fishmongers and children running between the stalls. This is something quieter and more uncertain, people speaking in hushed voices, doors closing, the particular silence that falls when a city starts to hold its breath. It is the summer of 430 BCE, and something has arrived in Athens. No one knows exactly where it came from. Some say it drifted in from the south, carried on ships from Egypt or Ethiopia. Some say it moved through the port of Piraeus first, touching the sailors before it touched anyone else. But wherever it began, it moves quickly, and it moves without mercy. The plague. You can imagine the smell of the city changing, that warm, familiar mixture of bread and olive oil and sea air, slowly giving way to something heavier, something that makes people turn their faces away and walk a little faster. The streets that were always full now feel strangely open. The spaces between people grow wider. Athens at this moment is already under enormous pressure. The great Peloponnesian War has been grinding on for a year. Pericles, the man who shaped this city more than almost anyone, had made a careful decision. He pulled the people in from the countryside. He brought them inside the long walls that connected Athens to its port. He told them to let Sparta march through the fields. Let them burn the olive trees. Athens would survive on trade and on its navy. It was a cold, logical plan. But no plan accounts for everything. With so many people crowded inside those walls, the plague found exactly what it needed: close quarters, shared water, shared air. The city that had been built for perhaps 100,000 people now held far more, and the disease moved through that crowded warmth like a fire through dry grass. The historian Thucydides, who lived through it himself and caught the illness and somehow survived, described what he saw with a careful, almost clinical honesty. He wrote about the burning heat in the body, the redness in the eyes, the terrible thirst that no amount of water could satisfy. He wrote about how the sick would throw themselves into wells trying to cool themselves down. He wrote about how the birds that fed on the bodies fell sick themselves. It is not a comfortable thing to sit with. But Thucydides wanted people to remember it clearly, because he understood that what happened to a city in a crisis tells you something true about that city. And what happened in Athens was complicated. There were acts of great tenderness, people who nursed the sick at risk to themselves, families who stayed close when it would have been safer to run. And there was also something else, a loosening, a sense that the old rules no longer held. Why save money for the future if the future might not come? Why follow the law if the law couldn't protect you? Pericles watched all of this. And then the plague took people he loved, his sons, his sister, and finally, in 429 BCE, it took him too. The man who had guided Athens through its golden years, who had commissioned the Parthenon, who had spoken so beautifully about what democracy meant and what it asked of its citizens, he died quietly, in a city that was still grieving, still frightened, still finding its way. But here is the thing that stays with you as you let this moment settle. Athens did not collapse. The democracy he helped build did not fall apart. It bent. It struggled. It lost something it would never quite recover. But it kept going. The assembly still met. People still argued and voted and disagreed and tried again. The scaffolding on the Acropolis was still there when the worst had passed. A city is not just its great men. It is not just its marble and its speeches. It is all the ordinary people who keep showing up, even when things are hard, even when they are afraid. You breathe out slowly. The night air is cool now. The city is quiet. And somewhere up on the hill, the stone is still standing. That cough still hangs in the air. You almost feel it in your own chest, that dry, hollow sound moving through empty streets. And then something else reaches you. Something carried on the warm summer wind. It is the smell of smoke. Not the comfortable smoke of a hearth fire or a baker's oven. This is something heavier, thicker. It has a green, bitter edge to it. The smell of living wood burning, of olive trees, of barley fields that someone has set alight before they could be harvested. You breathe it in slowly, and you understand, in the way your body understands before your mind does, that something has changed. It is 431 BCE, and the Spartans have come, not to Athens itself, not yet. They march through the countryside of Attica, that wide, gentle land surrounding the city. The farms and villages out there, the orchards and the grazing fields. The Spartan army moves through all of it slowly, deliberately. They are not rushing. They do not need to rush. Their message is written in fire and smoke, and it rises into the sky where everyone in Athens can see it. You are standing somewhere near the city walls. The stone beneath your hand is warm from the afternoon sun. It has that rough, dry texture, almost like bread that has been left out too long. And if you look out beyond the walls, you can see the distant haze. That brownish, yellowish smear on the horizon where the smoke is thickest. People around you are quiet. not silent. There are voices, there is movement, but the usual noise of the city feels muffled somehow, pressed down under the weight of what everyone can see. Because the fields burning out there belong to Athenians, families who have farmed that land for generations. And right now, those families are coming into the city. Thousands of them. They are walking through the gates with whatever they could carry. A few tools, a bundle of cloth, a child on one hip. They bring their animals too, goats and sheep, and the occasional ox, all of them pressing together in the narrow streets, adding their own warm, dusty smell to the air. Athens had been preparing for this. Not happily, not calmly. But the leader Pericles had spoken clearly to the assembly. He had said, "Do not go out to fight them in the open field. Let them burn what they burn. Athens has the sea. Athens has the ships. Athens has the silver from the mines at Laurium. The city can outlast a Spartan army that has to march home eventually." It was a hard argument to make, standing here, smelling the smoke of your own family's farm, hearing your neighbors weeping softly. It is very hard to hear a man say, "Let it burn," but the walls hold. The gates stay closed. You move deeper into the city, and the air changes slightly. There is the smell of cooking, someone frying something in oil, something with onions and dried herbs. Life continuing in the small ways it always does, even when the horizon is on fire. A child near you is eating a fig, the sweet sticky juice on their fingers, their eyes wide and curious rather than afraid. Children often do not know yet what to be afraid of. The Spartans will camp out there for weeks. They will move through the countryside like a slow, heavy tide. And then, when the season turns and their supplies run low, they will go home. And next year, they will come back. And a year after that. This is the shape of the war that is beginning. Not one great battle, not one decisive moment, but a long, grinding rhythm of seasons and suffering. A war that will last 27 years. You do not know that yet, standing here. No one does. People are still thinking in terms of months, perhaps a year or two at most. Surely it will resolve. Surely something will shift. The smoke drifts across the city and settles into your hair, your clothes. You will smell it for days, long after the Spartans have moved on. That faint bitterness will linger on the fabric of your tunic. Somewhere nearby, a goat bleats softly. A door creaks open and then closes again. The city breathes around you, uneasy and watchful. And out on the plain, the fires are still burning. The ash settles on your skin like something weightless and cold. You brush it from your arm, but more drifts down. It comes from the farms beyond the walls, from the olive groves that someone's grandfather planted, from the barns and the fences and the small wooden shrines at the edges of fields. All of it burning now, or already burned. And there is nothing left to do but feel it land on you, soft as dust, quiet as an ending. Athens has surrendered. It is hard to hold that thought. You turn it over slowly, the way you might turn a stone you found in the road, something ordinary that somehow feels wrong in your hand. The city that built the Parthenon, the city that turned back the Persians at Marathon, that sent ships across the Aegean, that filled the world with its ideas and its arguments and its restless, searching energy. That city has opened its gates. The terms are not gentle. The long walls must come down. Those great parallel walls that connected Athens to its port of Piraeus, the walls that made the city feel untouchable, that let it breathe through the sea, even when enemies stood at its gates, they are to be demolished. Stone by stone, you can almost hear it already. That slow rhythmic knock of hammers, the groan of ancient mortar giving way. The fleet is gone too, reduced to almost nothing, and the empire, all those islands and cities that once sent tribute to Athens, that once looked to this city as the center of their world, they are gone as well. Sparta has won. For a little while, the streets are very quiet. People move through them carefully, like they are not sure the ground will hold. There is a smell of smoke still, and underneath it something staler, old bread, unwashed wool, the particular heaviness of a city that has been under siege for too long. You have been hungry. Most people have. The siege at the end was cruel in that way, and then the 30 arrive. That is what people will call them, the 30 tyrants. A council of 30 men, chosen with Spartan approval, given power over the city. They are Athenians, most of them, men who never believed in the democracy, who thought the assembly was chaos, who wanted something tighter and more controlled. Now they have their moment. At first, some people tell themselves it might not be so bad. Change, they say carefully. Perhaps a different kind of order. You hear this in the agora, spoken quietly, with eyes that don't quite meet yours. People are tired. Tired of war, tired of loss, tired of everything. And tired people sometimes accept things they would never have accepted before. But the 30 move quickly, and they move hard. They begin with the men they call enemies. Informers, they say. Troublemakers. But the list grows wider than that. Men of wealth who are not their allies. Democratic leaders. People who simply ask the wrong question at the wrong moment. The prison fills. The hemlock is used. You hear the names of the dead passed from mouth to mouth in the market, in the doorways, in the dark corners of workshops where people lean close and speak low. There is a particular feeling in a city under that kind of rule. It lives in your shoulders, in the way you hold yourself when you walk. A slight tightening, a habit of glancing sideways. You choose your words more carefully than you used to. You notice who is standing nearby before you speak. The 30 rule for about 8 months. In the long story of Athens, it is a short time. But short times can leave long marks. What ends them is resistance. Athenian exiles, men who had fled the city, gather in the north. A man named Thrasybulus leads them. They take a fortress called Phyle, up in the hills above the city, and they hold it. More join them. The movement grows, and slowly, carefully, the democracy begins to fight its way back. By 403, the 30 are gone. There will be a reconciliation, an amnesty, a deliberate, difficult decision to let old wounds close rather than tear them open further. Athens will choose, with great effort, not to destroy itself in the settling of scores. You sit with that for a moment. The ash is gone from your arm now. The air is still. Somewhere in the city, a lamp is lit in a window, and its small warm light falls across the stones of the street below. It is enough, for now, just to see it burning. The taste of water has never been so clean. You drink from a clay cup near the edge of the agora, and it is just water, cool, simple, drawn from the same fountain as always. But after everything, after the long months of fear and silence and locked doors, it tastes like something new, like a beginning. You swallow slowly. You let it settle. The year is 403 BCE, and Athens is breathing again. It has not been easy to get here. You know that. Everyone in this city knows that. The 30 tyrants, that small, brutal council backed by Sparta, held Athens in their grip for nearly a year. They filled the prisons. They took property. They silenced voices that had spoken freely for generations. The stone walls of the city held their fear like cold iron, but the Democrats came back. Thrasybulus led them. He and a small group of exiles crossed from Phyle, a fortress in the hills to the north. They came down through the mountains in winter, when the ground was hard beneath their feet and the air bit at their hands. They were not many at first, but the city was ready for them. The oligarchs fell. The 30 were removed. And now, slowly, carefully, Athens is putting itself back together. You stand in the agora, and you feel the difference. It is not loud. It is not a celebration with drums and fire. It is quieter than that. It is the sound of men talking again, openly, in the open air, without looking over their shoulders. You can hear two men near the Stoa disagreeing about something, their voices rising and falling in that old familiar rhythm. A disagreement, a debate, such a small thing, such an enormous thing. The smell of the agora drifts around you, bread from a nearby stall, still warm, the crust just slightly burnt at the edge. Olive oil and dust, a faint trace of smoke from somewhere further off. These are ordinary smells. They have always been here. But ordinary feels precious today. The democratic institutions are being restored, piece by piece. The assembly will meet again on the Nyx Hill, that curved slope of rock where Athenian citizens have always gathered to vote and argue and decide. The courts will open. The archons will be chosen. The machinery of the democracy, imperfect, noisy, sometimes frustrating, will turn again. There is an amnesty too. One of the most remarkable things Athens will do in these years. An agreement not to prosecute most people for what happened under the 30. To let it rest. To move forward. It is called, in Greek, something like, do not remember the wrongs. And it is not a perfect peace. There are still tensions, still wounds. You can see it in the way some men avoid each other's eyes across the agora. But the agreement holds. You reach out and touch the rough surface of a stone column near the Stoa. It is warm from the morning sun, gritty under your fingertips. This column has been here through all of it. Through the democracy, through the oligarchy, through the fear. Stone does not take sides. It simply waits. Athens has always had this quality, you think. This ability to hold contradictions, to be brilliant and flawed, to fall and then, somehow, to find its way back to the idea of itself. The democracy that returns in 403 is not identical to what came before. It has been tested. It carries the memory of what it lost. Some of the new laws will be written down more carefully now, inscribed on stone so that no one can quietly change them. The Athenians have learned something about the fragility of what they built. A child runs past you, bare feet slapping against the warm stone of the agora floor. She does not notice you. She is chasing something, a dog, maybe, or just the open space. She laughs as she runs, a bright, quick sound that rises and disappears into the morning air. You watch her go, around you. The city hums with the low, steady sound of people going about their lives. Merchants, citizens, slaves, women carrying water jars on their heads, moving with practiced ease through the crowd. The whole complicated, layered world of Athens reassembling itself. The water from the clay cup is still cool on your tongue. You hold that feeling for a moment, the taste of something simple, something clean, something that feels, against all odds, like the first breath of a long-awaited morning. The light in Athens is different this morning. You notice it as you stand near the edge of the agora. It falls in long, pale strips between the columns of the stoa, soft and even, the way light looks after something has passed. After a storm, after a long silence finally broken, the city is still finding its footing. The exiles have come home. You saw them yesterday, sharing bread in the street, tearing it with their hands, passing it to neighbors they had not seen in years. That small, warm act still sits with you, the taste of something beginning again. But Athens is not simple. It never has been. There is a trial today. You have heard people speaking of it in low voices near the fountain house. A man named Socrates has been brought before a jury of 500 Athenian citizens. The charge is written on a tablet and read aloud in the open air. Impiety, they say. Corrupting the young. You find a place to stand where you can watch without being too close. The air smells faintly of dust and olive wood. Someone nearby is eating dried figs. The small, sweet smell drifts past you and disappears. Socrates is not young. He is in his 70s now. His face is broad and weathered. His clothes are plain, the kind of plain that is not poverty, but simply indifference to appearance. He does not perform for the crowd. He speaks the way he always has, directly, without decoration, asking questions where others would make speeches. You listen. He does not beg for his life. That is the thing that stays with you. In Athenian courts, it is common to bring your family forward, to weep, to appeal to the mercy of the jury. Socrates does none of this. He says that to do so would be beneath him, beneath the jury too. He says that a man who has spent his life asking what is good and what is just cannot abandon that life. At the moment it costs him something. There is a murmur through the crowd, not anger exactly. Something more complicated than anger. You feel the rough stone of the wall behind you as you lean back slightly. The morning is cool, but the sun is beginning to warm the open square. A pigeon lands near your feet, looks at you with one bright eye, and walks away. The jury votes. The verdict comes. Guilty. Then they vote again, on the penalty. Socrates is given the chance to propose an alternative to death. He suggests, with something close to dry humor, that perhaps the city should reward him with free meals for life, as they do for Olympic victors. The jury does not find this amusing. The vote shifts harder against him. The sentence is death. You stand very still. It is not the verdict alone that moves you. It is the strange, quiet dignity of the man at the center of it. He seems almost unbothered, not because he does not understand what has happened, but because he has thought about death for a long time and has made a kind of peace with it that most people never reach. He tells the jury something you will carry with you for a long time. He says that the unexamined life is not worth living. He says it plainly, without raising his voice, as though it is simply true, as though it has always been true. The crowd begins to thin. People drift back toward the market stalls, toward their work, toward the ordinary texture of the afternoon. You hear the sound of a cart somewhere, the creak of a wheel, the low voice of a man calling to his donkey. Athens goes on, but something has shifted, quietly, in the way a stone shifts when water moves beneath it. The questions Socrates asked, about justice, about knowledge, about how a person should live, those questions do not die with him. His students are already writing, already remembering, already shaping what he said into words that will travel far beyond this dusty square, beyond this city, beyond this century. You walk slowly back through the agora. The light is warmer now. The long pale strips of morning have softened into something fuller and more golden. A woman is selling honey near the steps of the stoa. The smell of it reaches you, thick and faintly floral, like something the earth made slowly and carefully. You pause for a moment beside her. Athens is a city that asks hard questions of itself. That has always been both its trouble and its gift. The sound reaches you before anything else. It is a low rumble, distant at first, like thunder rolling in from somewhere beyond the hills. But the sky above Athens is clear. The stars are just beginning to appear, pale and quiet. And yet, that sound keeps coming. The steady, rhythmic beat of thousands of feet moving across dry earth. Marching feet. Macedonian feet. You are standing near the Dippolon Gate, the great entrance to the city from the northwest. The stones beneath your sandals are warm from the day's heat, still holding the sun even as the air begins to cool. Around you, people have stopped walking. A woman with a basket of figs stands very still. An old man leans against a wall and listens. No one speaks. Everyone hears it. The year is 338 BCE, and the world Athens has known, the world of its own proud independence, is about to change. It had been building for years, of course. You might have felt it the way you feel a change in weather, a pressure in the air before rain. Philip II of Macedon had been moving steadily southward, city by city, valley by valley. He was patient in a way that unsettled people. He did not always fight. Sometimes he simply waited. Sometimes he offered terms that were hard to refuse. And sometimes, when the moment was right, he struck. The decisive blow came at a place called Chaeronea, in Boeotia, not so far from Athens. The Greek city-states, Athens and Thebes among them, had gathered their forces to stop him. They had stood together on that flat plain and fought with real courage. But Philip's army was something different. Disciplined, experienced, and led on one flank by his 18-year-old son, Alexander, who shattered the famous sacred band of Thebes so completely that the battle was over almost before Athens could understand what had happened. You can imagine the messengers arriving in the city, breathless, dusty, their faces saying everything before their mouths could form the words. The assembly would have gathered in a kind of stunned silence, the smell of lamp oil and anxious bodies filling the mix, voices low, uncertain. What do we do now? What Athens did, what it had always done in moments of crisis, was argue, debate, search for the right path through careful words. The orator Demosthenes, who had spent years warning the city about Philip, who had given speech after passionate speech urging resistance, now had to watch the thing he feared most come true. You can almost hear his voice, rough with grief and exhaustion, still trying to find meaning in the defeat, still believing that words mattered, that Athens mattered. And Philip, to his credit, was not cruel in victory. He did not burn the city. He did not enslave its people. He had too much respect for Athens, or perhaps too much political wisdom, to destroy what he clearly admired. He sent his son Alexander to return the ashes of the Athenian dead with honor. He offered terms that stung, but did not crush. Athens became part of something new, a league of Greek states, with Philip at its head. The word they used was hegemony, leadership, but everyone understood what it really meant. The long age of the independent polis, the city-state that answered to no one but itself, was quietly, irrevocably over. You walk away from the gate now, deeper into the city. The streets of Athens are still beautiful. The Acropolis still rises above you, the Parthenon still gleaming faintly in the last of the evening light. The agora still hums with the sounds of commerce and conversation. A child runs past you, laughing at something only she understands. A baker is closing up his stall, and the warm smell of bread lingers in the narrow lane. Life continues. It always does. But something has shifted beneath the surface, the way the ground shifts after an earthquake. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in ways you will keep noticing for years. The conversations in the stow are different now. More careful, more aware of a world beyond the city walls, a world that is larger and more powerful than Athens alone. Philip will be dead within 2 years, struck down by an assassin at a wedding celebration, and then his son will take everything his father built and carry it further than anyone thought possible. But that is still to come. For now, you sit on a low step near the agora, and you listen to the city breathe around you, and you wonder, very quietly, what comes next. The air smells of papyrus and lamp oil. It is a quiet, particular smell, dry and faintly sweet, the kind of smell that clings to your fingers after you have spent an afternoon turning pages. You notice it now, drifting softly through the open doorway of a small room where a teacher sits with 3 or 4 students around him. The lamp burns low. The evening is settling in. This is Athens, sometime in the long stretch of years after Alexander. The hoofbeats have faded. The dust has settled back onto the road. And what remains, what always remains, is the slow and patient work of thinking. You step a little closer and listen. The teacher is not lecturing. He's asking questions. His voice is unhurried, almost gentle. He pauses often. He lets the silence sit. One student answers, then another, and the teacher nods slowly, as if each answer is a stone being placed carefully into a wall. Not rushed, not forced, just built, one thought at a time. This is how philosophy lived in the Hellenistic world, not in grand marble halls, not in the roar of crowds, but in small rooms like this one, in gardens, under covered walkways where men walked slowly back and forth, talking, listening, thinking aloud. You have probably heard the names. The Stoics, who taught that the world runs on reason, and that the wisest thing a person can do is accept what they cannot change. The Epicureans, who said that a quiet life, shared with good friends, and free from unnecessary fear, is the truest kind of happiness. These were not abstract ideas. They were meant to be lived, to be carried through the day like a small, warm stone in your pocket. And here is something worth noticing. Even as the political world shifted and changed around them, even as kingdoms rose and borders moved, these schools kept going. Teachers taught students. Students became teachers. The ideas moved slowly outward, like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. You walk a little further now into the wider city. The streets are cooler than they were at midday. The stone beneath your feet holds just a trace of the day's warmth. You can smell bread from somewhere nearby, and faintly, the green smell of water from a fountain at the end of the lane. Athens in this period was not the dominant power it had once been. Other cities had grown larger, wealthier, more politically important. Alexandria, far to the south, had its great library. Pergamon had its own remarkable collection of scrolls. The world of Greek learning had spread wide, but Athens still held something, a kind of gravity, a reputation that pulled people toward it. Scholars came here to study. Young men came to sit with teachers, and the teachers stayed, generation after generation, tending these ideas the way a gardener tends something slow-growing and worth keeping. You find a low wall and sit down for a moment. The lamplight from the room behind you throws a soft yellow shape across the ground. A cat moves silently along the edge of the street and disappears into shadow. There is something deeply human about what happened here during these centuries. Empires came and went. Armies marched. Borders were redrawn. And yet, in rooms like this one, people kept asking the same quiet questions. How should I live? What do I owe to others? What can I know for certain? What should I let go? These questions did not have tidy answers. They still do not. But the asking of them, the careful, patient, unhurried asking, that was the work. And it was work that Athens understood well. You breathe in slowly, the lamp oil smell again, the faint warmth of the stone. Somewhere in the distance, a door closes softly. The teacher inside is still talking. His voice rises just slightly, then settles again. A student laughs quietly at something, and then there is a long, comfortable silence. This is what continuity feels like. Not the loud kind, not the kind that announces itself, but the quiet kind. The kind that lives in small rooms, in patient conversations, in the slow passing of ideas from one careful mind to another. The night is fully here now. The stars are out. The city breathes around you, easy and unhurried. You let your eyes close just a little. The questions can wait until morning. For now, it is enough to have sat here, in the soft dark, and listened. The parchment feels cool beneath your fingers. You are sitting in a quiet corner of the city, and someone has placed an old scroll in your hands. The surface is smooth in some places, rough in others, where time has worked its way into the fibers. You hold it carefully, the way you would hold something borrowed, something that belongs to a longer story than your own. And Athens, right now, is very much inside a longer story. It is 126 BCE. The city is still here. The temples still stand. The agora still fills each morning with voices and footsteps, and the smell of bread and olive oil warming in the early sun. But something has shifted. Something in the air. Something in the way people move through the streets. A little more careful, perhaps. A little more watchful. Rome has come. Not with fire. Not with the kind of destruction that leaves a city unrecognizable. Rome came to Athens the way a large shadow falls across a smaller one. Quietly, completely. And now Athens finds itself inside that shadow, trying to remember what the light felt like before. The Roman Republic has been growing for a long time. You have felt it, even here, in the way trade has changed, in the way certain conversations happen in lower voices. And now, after the fall of Corinth, that great and wealthy city to the west, dismantled by Roman forces this very same year, there is no longer any question about who holds power over this part of the world. Greece, as a whole, is now folded into Rome's reach. Not yet a formal province, that will come later, but the understanding is clear. Rome is the authority. Rome sets the terms. And yet, Athens is not treated the way Corinth was treated. Corinth was made an example. Its people scattered, its treasures carried away, its buildings left to crumble. Athens is handled differently, and you can feel that difference as you sit here with your scroll. There is a kind of respect in the way Rome looks at this city, a complicated, political, almost reverent respect, because Rome knows what Athens is. Athens is the place where philosophy was born, where Socrates walked and asked his questions, where Plato wrote and Aristotle taught, where the idea of democracy first took shape, however imperfectly, however long ago. Rome's educated classes have grown up reading Athenian texts, learning Athenian ideas, speaking the Greek language as a mark of refinement and learning. To destroy Athens would be to destroy something Rome itself admires. So Athens is left standing. Its schools remain open. Its philosophers continue to teach. The Academy, the Lyceum, the Stoa, these places still breathe. You can walk into them and hear arguments about virtue and knowledge and the nature of the good life. The conversations are the same. The questions are the same. But the political reality is different now. The scroll in your hands feels heavier somehow, even though nothing has changed about its weight. It is just paper and ink, but it carries the words of people who lived in a different Athens. A freer Athens, or at least an Athens that believed itself to be free. And reading those words now, in this new moment, gives them a different texture. Outside, you can hear the city going about its day. A cartwheel turning on stone, someone calling out in Greek, the language still alive and warm in every mouth. A child laughing somewhere nearby. The smell of pine resin drifts in from the direction of the hills. Life continues. That is the strange and quiet truth of this moment. Empires shift and borders change and power moves from one hand to another, and still the bread is baked, and the children laugh, and the philosophers ask their questions. Athens has been conquered before, in different ways, by different forces. It has known siege and plague and civil strife. It has rebuilt itself more than once from the inside out. And each time, it has carried something forward, some thread of itself that refused to be entirely lost. You set the scroll down gently on the table beside you. The parchment settles with a soft, dry whisper, and you find yourself wondering what it means to be a city that the conqueror cannot quite bring himself to erase. What it means to be valued for your past, even as your future is decided by someone else. The question hangs in the quiet air, unanswered for now. There is something in the air here that you can almost taste. A dry, chalky warmth. The kind that settles on the back of your tongue when you stand near freshly cut stone on a hot afternoon. It is not unpleasant. It is the taste of a city being remade. You are still standing near the arch. Your fingers still carry the memory of that smooth marble, cooler than you expected, almost silky against your skin. And now you breathe in slowly, and you taste the dust of it. Fine white powder drifting from the stonemason's work nearby. It coats your lips just slightly. You press them together and feel the faint grit. This is what a city under construction tastes like. Hadrian has been emperor for some years now. And Athens, this old and beloved city, has caught his attention in a way that few places ever do. He is not simply passing through. He is not simply leaving a monument behind to mark his visit. He is building. Seriously, carefully, lovingly building. You walk slowly away from the arch and into the city beyond it. The streets here feel different from the old quarter. Wider, more deliberate. The stones beneath your feet are laid with a kind of precision that feels almost careful, almost gentle. Someone planned this. Someone thought about how it would feel to walk here. Hadrian has visited Athens more than once. He has studied its philosophy, its art, its long and layered history. He admires this place the way a quiet person admires something they have loved for a long time. And so he gives it gifts. The library is one of them. You pass near it now, and you can hear the low echo of voices inside, the soft shuffle of feet on stone. It is a large building, colonnaded and cool-looking, even from the outside. Inside, scholars come to read. Scrolls are kept here. Knowledge is stored carefully, the way you might store something precious in a dry and sheltered place. You stop and listen. The sound of a city working and thinking at the same time. A hammer somewhere in the distance. A cartwheel on stone. And underneath it all, that particular quiet that old cities carry even when they are busy, the Olympian draws your eye next. You can see its columns rising in the middle distance, tall and golden in the afternoon light. This temple to Zeus had been started centuries before. Many rulers had promised to finish it. Hadrian actually does. He completes it, and he dedicates it. And the columns stand there now, in a way that feels both ancient and new at the same time. You walk toward it slowly. The light is warm on your face. The air smells faintly of olive wood smoke from somewhere nearby, and underneath that, the dry earth smell of summer in this part of the world. You breathe it in and feel your shoulders drop a little. This is what it feels like to be in a city that someone has decided to care for. Hadrian does not simply impose Roman ideas on Athens. He is more thoughtful than that. He respects what is already here. The new buildings speak a language that Athens already understands. Columns, proportion, marble, light. They feel like additions rather than replacements, like someone who joins a conversation rather than interrupting it. He also creates something called the Panhellenes, a kind of gathering, a league of Greek cities that can come together and share their identity. Athens is at the center of it. It is a quiet acknowledgement, a way of saying that this place still matters, that its history is not finished. You sit down on a low step near the edge of a courtyard. The stone is warm from the sun. You press your palms flat against it and feel the heat move into your hands. Around you, the city continues its afternoon. Someone is selling figs nearby. You can smell them, sweet and heavy. A child laughs somewhere out of sight. Athens in this moment is a city held between two worlds, the ancient one, full of memory and philosophy and myth, and the new one, shaped by an emperor who loved it enough to leave something lasting behind. You close your eyes for just a moment. The sun is gentle on your face. The dust has settled. The marble of the arch is still cool in your memory, and the city breathes quietly around you, old and new at once, tended and still, resting in the long, warm afternoon of a century that has been, in its own way, kind to it. The light has changed. You notice it first in the buildings. Something subtle, something you might almost miss if you weren't paying attention. The old temple on the hill, the one with the wide stone steps, worn smooth by generations of sandaled feet. It looks different this morning. The doors are open, yes, but the smoke rising from inside is not the thick, sweet smoke of animal offerings. It is thinner, quieter, almost like breath. Something is shifting in this city. It is the 4th century now, the empire that built these streets, that pressed its coins and its language and its gods into every corner of daily life. That empire is changing. And when an empire changes, its cities feel it first. Not in proclamations, not in armies marching through the gates. They feel it in small things, in what hangs above a doorway, in what name a mother whispers when her child is sick in the night. You walk slowly through the forum. The stone beneath your feet is the same stone it has always been. Cool in the morning, warm by midday. The colonnades still stand. The market stalls are still here, still fragrant with dried herbs and fresh bread and the faint oiliness of leather. A man is selling figs from a wooden cart. They are dark and soft, just past ripe, and the smell of them is heavy and sweet in the morning air. But look more carefully at the people passing by. There, a woman with a small cross carved from bone, hanging at her throat on a thin cord. She touches it without thinking, the way people touch things that comfort them. And there, 2 men talking quietly near the fountain, their voices low, their heads close together. One of them traces something in the air with his finger, a shape you are beginning to recognize. Christianity has been here for a while now. It came quietly, the way new ideas often do. It moved through households, through conversations, through the back rooms of shops and the private courtyards of homes. For a long time, it was something people practiced carefully, privately, with one eye on the door. But that was before. That was the old fear. Now the emperor himself has turned toward this faith. And everything that follows from that, the permissions, the buildings, the public prayers, all of it is beginning to settle into the life of this city, like morning light settling into stone. You find a spot near the edge of the forum and sit for a moment. The air is cool against your arms. A pigeon lands near your feet, pecks at something invisible between the paving stones, and flies away again. From somewhere not far off, you can hear singing. It is different from the old temple music. No drums, no reeds, no sharp bronze bells. This is voices only. Low and steady and woven together, like cloth being made on a loom. It is coming from a building you have walked past many times without thinking much about it. A large hall, long and rectangular, with high narrow windows that let in pale columns of light. You have seen buildings like this before. They were used for law, for commerce, for the business of civic life. But this one has been given over to something else now. The basilica, people are calling it. The church. You do not go inside. Not yet. You simply stand at the edge of the open door and listen. The singing continues, unhurried, breathing in and out like the city itself. And you think about all the layers beneath your feet. The old gods are not gone. Not entirely. Not yet. Their temples still stand. Their festivals are still remembered by older people who grew up with them, who learned the prayers as children and cannot quite let go. Change does not happen all at once. It happens the way seasons change, gradually, then suddenly, then so completely that you can barely remember what came before. But right now, in this moment, you are standing at the threshold. The old world is still warm behind you, like sweet wine still settling in your chest. And the new world is here, just ahead, cool and quiet and full of that slow, steady singing. You breathe in. The smell of incense drifts through the doorway, not the heavy temple smoke of before, but something lighter, resinous, almost like pine in winter. You rest in the doorway a little longer. Something is beginning. The candle still burns somewhere behind you. You can almost hear it, that tiny, soft flutter of flame finding air. And then, beneath that, something else, a low hum. Voices, perhaps, or the wind moving through old stone corridors. It's hard to tell, in a city this ancient, where the building ends and the breathing begins. This is Constantinople in the long centuries after Justinian, after the Great Dome was raised, after the mosaics were set, tile by tiny tile, into the walls of churches that smelled of beeswax and incense and damp plaster. The city is still here. That is the remarkable thing. It is still here, because it almost wasn't. Many times over, you can feel it in the walls if you press your hand against the old stone. There is a roughness to it, a texture of repair, places where the mortar is a slightly different color, where a newer stone sits beside an older one. Every city carries its wounds this way, quietly, in the surfaces you touch without thinking. The 7th century brought the Avars to the gates, then the Persians, then, not long after, the armies of the early Islamic caliphates pressed against the city's sea walls, once and then again. The Theodosian walls, those long, layered fortifications on the landward side, held. They always held. You walk along them in your mind, and you notice how thick they are, how patient. 3 lines of defense, one behind the other, like a slow, careful argument that refuses to be lost. Inside those walls, the city kept living. Markets opened in the mornings. Bread was baked. The smell of it drifted through narrow streets, where Greek and Armenian and Syriac were all spoken within a single block. Children ran past columns that had been standing since the time of Rome. Life has a way of continuing, even when the gates are under siege. But there was another kind of struggle happening inside the city, quieter, harder to see from the outside. It was a struggle over images. In the 8th century, the emperors began to order the removal of holy icons, the paintings and mosaics of saints and Christ that covered the walls of churches. They called them dangerous. They called them a kind of worship that had gone wrong. This was iconoclasm, the breaking of images, and it divided the city the way a crack divides a stone, slowly, deeply, all the way through. You can imagine the feeling of it. Walking into a church and finding a wall that used to glow with gold and color now bare, plastered over, white and silent. Some people felt relief. Others felt grief so sharp it sat in their chests like something swallowed wrong. Monks were exiled. Artists went underground. And yet, and this is the part that stays with you, the images survived, hidden in homes, wrapped in cloth, carried across water. People kept them the way you keep something precious. Quietly, close to the body, not speaking of it, unless you trusted the person beside you completely. By the 9th century, the icons came back. There was a moment, in 843, that the church still marks as the triumph of orthodoxy. The images were restored to the walls. The gold came back. The faces of the saints looked out again from the plaster, patient as ever, as if they had simply been waiting. You can almost hear the sound of that morning, the soft scraping of cloth pulled away from a mosaic, the first light catching the gold tessera. A breath held, then released. The city moved through these centuries, the way a person moves through a long illness, slowly, carefully, sometimes losing ground, sometimes finding it again. The population shrank from what it had been in Justinian's time. Some neighborhoods emptied out. Grass grew between old paving stones, but the center held. The church held. The walls held. And the knowledge held too. In the monasteries and in the libraries attached to the great churches, manuscripts were copied by hand. Greek philosophy, early Christian theology, medical texts, the scratch of a reed pen on vellum, the smell of ink, the lamp burning low at the edge of a table. This was how a civilization kept itself alive through the dark. You breathe in slowly now. The city is quieter than it was in its golden age. But it is not gone. It is resting, gathering itself. Somewhere in the dark, a monk turns a page. A candle steadies. The walls stand, as they have always stood, in the long, patient silence of stone. The smell reaches you first. It is something unfamiliar. Something carried on the sea wind from the west. Wool and leather, and the faint metallic edge of armor, left too long in salt air. It mingles with the older scents of Athens, the dry dust of the Acropolis, the warm herb smell of the agora, the faint sweetness of olive wood smoke rising from the lower city. But this new smell does not belong here. Not yet. And still, it has arrived. The bells have only just fallen quiet. Their echo still hums somewhere in the stone walls of the old churches. And into that silence, Something new is beginning. It is the year 1204. Far to the north and west, the great city of Constantinople has fallen, not to an eastern enemy, but to the knights of the Fourth Crusade, crusaders who had set out for the Holy Land and turned aside, who had taken the greatest Christian city in the world for themselves. And the ripples of that moment travel far. They travel here, to Athens, to this small and ancient place that has been sleeping quietly under Byzantine rule for centuries. You might imagine the city as it was then, small, modest, really. The great classical temples had long since become Christian churches. The Parthenon, high on the Acropolis, had been a cathedral for hundreds of years by now. Its white marble walls held the smell of incense and beeswax candles. Its floor was worn smooth by the feet of worshippers. It was a living place, not a ruin. Not yet a ruin. The people of Athens in these years were Greek-speaking, Orthodox Christian, rooted in the rhythms of the Byzantine world. They knew the liturgy. They knew the land. They knew the olive harvest and the dry summer heat and the particular blue of the Saronic Gulf on a clear morning. And then the Franks came. Frankish knights, Western Europeans, French-speaking, Catholic, moved through the fractured remains of the Byzantine Empire after 1204, claiming territories for themselves. Athens and the surrounding region of Attica became the Duchy of Athens, a feudal lordship carved out of ancient ground. The first lord was a Burgundian knight. His name was Othon de la Roche. He walked up the long slope of the Acropolis and looked out over the city below, the red rooftops, the silver-green olive groves stretching toward the coast, the distant shimmer of the sea. He would have felt the warm stone beneath his boots. He would have heard the wind moving through the columns of the old temple above him. And he would have understood, perhaps, that he was standing somewhere that had seen many rulers come and go. Under Frankish rule, Athens became something layered and strange. The Catholic Church moved into spaces that had been orthodox. Latin was used in administration. French was spoken in the halls of power, and yet Greek did not disappear. It lived in the streets, in the markets, in the homes of the people who had always been here. Two worlds existed side by side, not always comfortably, but existing. You can almost feel that tension in the air, the roughness of a new stone wall built against an old one, the sound of a Latin prayer echoing through a space where Greek had always been spoken, the smell of unfamiliar cooking, different spices, different oils, drifting from the houses of the new lords. The Duchy of Athens passed through several hands over these years. The de la Roche family held it for generations. Then, in the 14th century, something unexpected happened. A group of mercenary soldiers, the Catalan company, arrived from the Iberian Peninsula. They had been fighting in the east and found themselves without a war, without pay, without a home. In 1311, at the Battle of Halmyros, they defeated the Frankish duke in a single morning. The marshy ground swallowed the Frankish cavalry, and the Catalans took Athens for themselves. It is a strange chapter in the city's long story, a mercenary army becoming rulers, Catalan-speaking lords presiding over a Greek-speaking city, in a place where Latin churches stood on ancient Greek foundations. You settle into that strangeness now. Let it rest quietly around you. Athens has always held its contradictions gently, always let new things arrive, and kept the old things breathing underneath. The night air carries that mix of old and new, dust and sea, incense and iron, and somewhere in the city, a single lamp still burns. The air still carries that warmth on your skin, a dry, spiced warmth, like something pressed into cloth and carried a long way. You reach out and touch the rough stone of a market wall, and it feels solid beneath your fingers, real, familiar. And yet the city around you has been through so many hands, so many voices have echoed down these streets. Now, quietly, Constantinople is Byzantine again. It happened in 1261, not with a great battle, not with fire and thunder. It happened almost gently, in the way that surprising things sometimes do. A Byzantine general named Alexios Strategopoulos moved through the city with a small force while the Latin defenders were away. The gates opened. The city returned. And after nearly 60 years under Latin rule, the double-headed eagle flew again over the walls of Constantinople. You walk slowly through the streets now, in the decades that follow. The city feels different from what it once was. Quieter. A little thinner. The grand avenues are still here. The old colonnades and the familiar smell of the sea coming in off the Bosphorus. But there are empty spaces where there were not empty spaces before. Buildings that were never repaired. Neighborhoods that never quite filled back in. You press your hand to a column near the old forum. The stone is cool and smooth, worn down by centuries of touch. It has been here through so many things. It does not seem troubled by any of it. The Byzantine emperors who return, the Paleologos dynasty, they try. You can feel that effort in the city. There is new mosaic work in some of the churches, soft gold and deep blue, catching the candlelight in the way that only Byzantine craftsmen know how to do. You stand in a doorway and look at one of these images, a face looking back at you with calm, dark eyes. And for a moment, the city feels whole again. But the treasury is not what it was. The empire is not what it was. It is smaller now, and the world around it is pressing in. You step outside, and the afternoon light falls warm across your shoulders. The market is still busy. Merchants call out softly, not with the loud foreign voices of the Latin years, but in Greek, in the old familiar rhythms. Someone nearby is selling dried figs, and the smell is sweet and dusty and very old. You take one, and it tastes of sun, of somewhere south and dry, of summer already past. The Genoese have a quarter across the water in Galata. You can see their tower from here, rising pale and steady above the Golden Horn. The Byzantines allowed them to settle there, a trade arrangement, a careful friendship. But careful friendships have their own kind of weight. You feel it, standing here. The city needs trade. The city needs allies. And allies always want something in return. To the east, the Ottoman Turks are growing stronger. You do not see them yet, not here in the market, not in these streets. But the news comes in like weather. A city taken here. A border moved there. The sound of it is distant, like thunder behind hills. Not yet overhead, but coming. The emperors write letters. They send envoys to the west, to Rome, to the kings of Europe. They ask for help. They offer things, church unity, old agreements, new ones. The replies are slow. Sometimes they do not come at all. You imagine a messenger arriving at the palace gate, tired from a long road, carrying a letter that says very little. The emperor reading it by lamplight, setting it down. Still, life continues. It always does. Children play near the old cisterns. A woman hangs cloth from a window, and it catches the breeze, pale blue against the stone. A cat sleeps on a warm step, one paw curled under its chin, unbothered by empires. You sit down nearby and rest your back against the wall. The stone is warm from the afternoon sun. You close your eyes for a moment and listen. Voices, footsteps. The soft lap of water somewhere below the city, in the old underground chambers where the cisterns breathe in the dark. Constantinople is still here, still breathing, a little worn, a little smaller than it remembers itself being. But the light is golden on the rooftops, and the evening is coming in slowly, and for now, this moment is enough. The coins are still there in your hand, cool and worn, the edges soft from so many years of passing between fingers. You can almost taste the metal on the air, that faint, dry sharpness that old bronze carries, like the memory of rain on stone. It sits at the back of your throat, quiet and strange. It is 1456, not long ago at all, in the slow counting of cities. Athens has changed hands. The Ottoman forces came to the Acropolis the year before, and the city, this old, patient city, has begun to breathe differently now, not with fear, exactly, more like a held breath slowly releasing. The kind of exhale that comes after something long uncertain finally settles into shape. You are standing in the lower city near the old market ground. The morning is cool. The light comes in low and golden, the way it always does here in autumn, touching the dust on the road and making it glow just slightly. You notice how the dust smells, dry and mineral, a little like crushed clay. It is the same dust it has always been. The city remembers itself even when its rulers change. Around you, the sounds are layered. There is the soft knock of a wooden shutter being opened somewhere above. There is the low call of a vendor, not urgent, just announcing himself. There is the distant, unhurried sound of a hammer on stone. Somewhere up on the hill, work is already beginning. The Ottomans are practical administrators. They do not leave things idle. The Parthenon, which had been a Christian church for centuries, will soon become a mosque. This is not destruction, not exactly. It is transformation. The building will receive a minaret. The prayers that rise from it will be different prayers, spoken in a different language, facing a different direction. But the stone itself, that pale, ancient limestone, will continue to hold the light the way it always has, warm in the afternoon, silver blue at dusk. You walk a little further along the road. The stones beneath your feet are uneven, worn smooth in the middle where generations of feet have pressed them down. You can feel the slight give of packed earth at the edges, softer there, cooler. A cat watches you from a low wall. It blinks slowly and looks away. The population of Athens at this time is small. Surprisingly small, if you think of what this city once was. A few thousand people, perhaps, living among ruins that once held hundreds of thousands. They are Greeks, mostly. They have their churches, their priests, their language. The Ottoman system, the millet system, as it will come to be known, allows them a degree of self-governance in matters of religion and community. Life continues. It is quieter than empire, but it continues. A woman passes you carrying a clay pot. The smell of something warm drifts from it. Olive oil, maybe, or a thick bean broth. It is a small, ordinary smell, the kind that reminds you that even in years of great change, people are still feeding themselves, still keeping their households, still moving through the morning with the same small purposes they always have. The Acropolis rises above everything, as it always has. You look up at it now. The walls are old. The columns are older. There is scaffolding at one end. You can just make it out. Thin wooden poles lashed together. Someone is repairing something. Someone is always repairing something here. The new governor of Athens, appointed by the Ottoman administration, will set up his seat not far from where you are standing. The city will be administered from within. Taxes will be collected. Trade will continue along the routes it has always followed. down to the port at Piraeus, out into the Aegean, toward Constantinople, which is now itself an Ottoman city, renamed and reshaped. Athens is a small piece of a very large empire now, and perhaps that smallness is a kind of protection. The great powers look elsewhere. The city is left to its rhythms. You find a low step near an old wall and sit down. The stone is cool through your clothes. Above you, a swallow cuts across the sky, fast, purposeful, indifferent to empires. You watch it until it disappears over the rooftop. The morning is still young, the city is still waking, and somewhere up on the hill, that slow, steady hammering continues, patient and unhurried, shaping something new out of something very, very old. The minarets catch the early light in a way that is almost impossible to describe. They are pale against the blue, very still, like fingers pointing gently upward. You watch them from a low doorway, and the morning feels unhurried around you. This is Istanbul in its long Ottoman centuries. Not a single moment, but a whole way of living, a rhythm that built itself slowly, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, until the city breathed with one quiet pulse. The coffee is still on your tongue, bitter and dark and warming. It came to you in a small cup, handleless, almost too hot to hold. You wrapped your fingers around it anyway. That is what people do here. They hold the warmth a little longer than they need to. The coffee house where you sat was not a grand place. Low ceilings, cushioned benches worn soft by years of use. Men gathered there, not only to drink but to talk, to listen, to play backgammon on boards that clicked and clattered in a gentle rhythm. Some came just to sit. That was allowed. That was understood. Outside, the streets are narrow and uneven underfoot. The stone is old and slightly damp from the night. You can feel the roughness of it through the soles of your shoes. Cats move between your feet without hurry, as if they have always lived here, which they have. They belong to no one and to everyone. They sleep on warm windowsills. They watch the world with half-closed eyes. The smell of bread reaches you before you see the baker. Sesame and warmth, drifting from a low wooden door. Inside, rounds of simit are stacked in careful towers. The baker lifts them with practiced ease, dusting flour from his hands. You buy one and eat it slowly, tearing the bread apart with your fingers, the crust flaking softly against your palm. This city holds many communities at once. Greek and Armenian and Jewish neighborhoods sit close to Muslim ones. Each has its own churches, its own synagogues, its own particular sounds on a Sunday or a Saturday or a Friday. The call to prayer rises 5 times a day, and the city pauses around it, just slightly, the way a conversation pauses when someone says something true. The bazaars are where everything comes together. Not just goods, but languages. You hear Turkish and Greek and Ladino and Armenian, all within a few steps of each other. Merchants call out in whichever tongue will be understood. Hands gesture. Prices are negotiated with patience and a kind of theatre. A deal is sealed with tea, always with tea, poured from a small glass that glows amber in the light. The women of the city move through it in their own ways. Some in the markets, some in the hammam, the bathhouse, where the steam is thick and warm, and the marble is smooth beneath your feet. The hammam is a place of rest and conversation. You sit in the heat, and the world outside feels very far away. The sound of water echoes softly. Someone laughs, and the sound carries easily through the warm air. At home, the rooms are arranged around a central courtyard when there is space for one. Tiles in blue and white line the walls. A fountain might sit at the center, its small sound constant and calming. Food is prepared slowly. Lamb with spices, rice with dried fruit. Flatbread cooked directly on the flame. Families eat together on low tables, seated on cushions, close to the ground and close to each other. The evenings come gently here. The light turns gold, and then rose, and then a deep, soft blue. Lamps are lit in the windows. The city does not go entirely quiet, but it softens. The minarets stand in silhouette now, dark against the fading sky, and you look at them again from where you are sitting. They are the same minarets from this morning, but they look different now. Calmer, perhaps. Or maybe you are the one who is calmer. This is what centuries of daily life do to a city. They settle into it. They become part of its stone, and its light, and its smell. The coffee, the bread, the cats, the tiles, the sound of water in a courtyard. None of it is remarkable on its own, but together it makes something whole. You breathe it in slowly. The evening air is cool now and faintly sweet. The city rests around you, and you rest with it, and the long day folds quietly into the dark. The sound reaches you before anything else. It is low at first, a kind of murmur, moving through the streets like water finding its level. Voices, many voices, folding into each other somewhere in the distance. You are not sure if you are still half asleep, or if the city itself has shifted in the night. Athens in the early months of 1821 is still a small place, quiet by most measures. The Ottoman administration sits at the center of things, as it has for nearly 4 centuries. The old Acropolis rises above the rooftops, its stones pale in the early morning light. The air smells of wood smoke and damp earth. Spring is just beginning to press through the cold. But something is different today. You can feel it in the way people move. A little faster, a little more careful. Eyes that glance sideways before a word is spoken. There is a tension in the air that is almost physical, like the skin of a drum pulled tight. You press your fingers against the cool stone of a doorway, and the stone feels the same as always. Solid, old, unmoved. And yet, the word has been spreading for weeks now, passed hand to hand, like a flame carried in cupped palms. Far to the north, across the mountains, something has begun. A declaration. A rising. The Greek War of Independence, they are calling it. Though no one here says those words loudly. Not yet. You hear a man speaking to another man near the market. Their voices are low. One of them glances up, sees you, and goes quiet. Then they move away together, their sandals soft on the stone. The Ottoman presence in Athens is real, and it is close. The garrison on the Acropolis has been there for generations. The converted mosque you passed last night, its dome catching the moonlight, is a daily reminder of who holds the keys to this city. And yet the city has never fully forgotten what it was before. The old names are still used. The old language is still spoken in homes, in churches, in whispers between neighbors. You walk a little further into the morning. The air tastes faintly of olive oil, warm and grassy, drifting from somewhere nearby, where someone is already cooking. A child runs past you, bare feet slapping the ground, laughing at something you cannot see. The ordinary life of the city continues. It always does. But underneath it, something is turning. The Greek Orthodox Church has been a quiet keeper of identity here for a long time. The priests know their congregations. The congregations know each other. And in 1821, that network of knowing, of shared faith and shared memory, becomes something more than spiritual. It becomes a kind of infrastructure, a way of passing news, a way of holding together. You pass a small church tucked between two older buildings. The door is slightly open. From inside, you can hear the low resonance of a chant, a single voice moving slowly through a familiar prayer. The sound is round and deep, and it settles into your chest like warmth. Outside the church, two older women stand talking. One of them holds a small bundle of dried herbs, and the sharp, clean smell of them drifts toward you as you pass. They do not stop talking as you walk by. Their voices are steady, calm, but their hands, you notice, are clasped tightly together. The news from the north is not all hope. There is fear in it too. Everyone here understands what a rebellion means, what it costs. The Ottoman Empire is vast and old, and it does not release what it holds without a struggle. The people of Athens have lived inside that reality for a very long time. They know how to survive. They know how to wait. And still, the murmur continues, moving through the streets, moving through the walls of houses and the spaces between people standing close together. Something has been said that cannot be unsaid. Something has been started that will not easily stop. You find a low step near a fountain and you sit down. The water makes a small, steady sound as it falls. Cool air rises from it and touches your face. Around you, the city is waking fully now. The sounds of morning filling in, donkeys and footsteps, and the distant clatter of a shutter being pushed open. You sit with all of it. The ordinary and the extraordinary pressed together. A city on the edge of something enormous, still wearing its quiet morning face, still breathing slowly, still holding, for just a moment longer, the breath it has not yet released. The smell of gunpowder drifts on the morning air. It is sharp and bitter, almost metallic, and it settles at the back of your throat like a memory of something difficult. You breathe through it slowly. The smoke is thin now, just a pale ribbon curling up from somewhere near the old Venetian tower. And gradually, underneath it, you begin to find the other smells of Athens. Dry dust, sun-warmed stone, the faint sweetness of wild thyme growing in the cracks between ancient blocks. The city is waking up. It is 1834, and Athens is doing something it has not done in a very long time. It is becoming a capital again. You walk through the lower town, where the houses are small and close together. Most of them are made of rough stone and dried mud. The rooftops are low and flat. Washing hangs between doorways, pale cloth moving gently in the early breeze. A dog trots past you without looking up. Somewhere nearby, a woman is grinding grain, and the soft rhythmic sound of it fills the narrow lane like a quiet heartbeat. This is not the Athens of marble columns and grand processions. Not yet. This is a town of perhaps 4,000 people, modest and worn, still carrying the marks of long years of war. You can see it in the walls, patched, repatched, leaning at odd angles. You can see it in the faces too, tired but watchful, curious about what comes next. What comes next is enormous. Just months ago, the young King Otto arrived on Greek soil. He is 17 years old, a Bavarian prince, chosen by the great powers of Europe to lead this new nation. He has never lived in Greece. He does not yet speak Greek. But he has been given a kingdom, and that kingdom needs a heart. And so Athens has been chosen. The decision was not obvious to everyone. Nafplio had been the capital before this. It was a proper port town, with real streets and proper buildings, and a harbour where ships came and went with ease. Athens, by comparison, was a ruin. A beautiful ruin, yes, but still a ruin. The population was small. The roads were poor. There was no royal palace, no government building, no infrastructure to speak of. But there was the Acropolis. You look up at it now, as you have looked up at it so many times on this journey. It sits above the town in the early morning light, pale gold against the sky that is just beginning to warm toward blue. The Parthenon stands at the top, roofless, open to the sky, its columns casting long thin shadows down the hillside. It is damaged, it is incomplete, but it is unmistakable. That is exactly the point. For the new Greek state, still fragile, still finding its shape, the Acropolis is more than a monument. It is an argument. It says, this is where we come from. This is the ground beneath our story. Other cities have walls and warehouses. Athens has this. And this, the new government decided, was worth more than any harbor. You reach a small square near the base of the hill and sit down on a low stone wall. The stone is cool against the backs of your legs. A cat appears from somewhere and settles nearby, tucking its paws beneath its chest. You watch the light shift slowly across the columns above you. Bavarian architects are already drawing plans for a new city. Streets will be laid out in a grid. Neoclassical buildings will rise from the dust. A royal palace will be built on the edge of a wide square. The little Ottoman town that exists right now, its winding lanes, its wooden balconies, its small mosques and hammams, much of it will be swept away. Change, when it comes, will come quickly. But this morning, none of that has happened yet. This morning, Athens is still just itself. Quiet, dusty, ancient. A small town sitting in the shadow of something much older than any nation. The cat beside you blinks slowly and closes its eyes. The smell of gunpowder has faded completely now. In its place, there is only warm stone and time, and the faint, dry sweetness of a city that has waited a very long time for this moment. It breathes in, it breathes out, and somewhere up on the hill, the morning light moves across the marble, the way it has always moved, patient and unhurried, as if it already knew this day would come. The dust settles on your fingertips, fine and pale, almost like flour. You brush it away slowly, and it leaves a faint white ghost on your skin. This is the dust of something beginning, something being built from the ground up, stone by careful stone. Athens in 1834 is a city that barely knows itself yet. For centuries, it had been a small, quiet town under Ottoman rule. Most of its ancient glory was buried under earth and time. The Acropolis stood above it all. Yes, patient and weathered, but down below, the streets were narrow and winding. The houses were modest, the population was small, and then everything changed. Greece had won its independence. A new kingdom had been declared, and the young nation needed a capital. A real one, a city that could carry the weight of all that history and all that hope. So Athens was chosen. You can almost feel the decision in the air, something charged, something expectant. Like the moment before rain. The new king, Otto, arrived from Bavaria. He was just 17 years old. He had never seen Greece before, and yet here he was, stepping into a city that was little more than ruins and rubble, tasked with turning it into something worthy of a modern European nation. It must have felt enormous, and also, perhaps, a little impossible. But the plans came quickly. Two architects, the Bavarians Stamatheos Cleisthenes and Eduard Schaubert, had already drawn up a vision for the new city, a grid of wide streets, broad avenues, public squares where people could gather and breathe, and buildings, grand, symmetrical, Neoclassical buildings that would echo the ancient world while announcing something new. You walk one of those planned streets now, and you can feel the difference underfoot. The ground is more even here. The stones are fitted together with intention. Someone thought carefully about where your feet would fall. Neoclassicism was the chosen language of this new Athens, and it made a certain kind of sense. The ancient Greeks had given the world columns and pediments, symmetry and proportion. Now the modern Greeks and their European allies would borrow that vocabulary back. They would build a city that looked like it remembered where it came from. The smell of fresh cut stone drifts past you. Sharp and mineral. Clean. Slowly, the city begins to take shape. The royal palace rises on Syntagma Square, solid, pale, commanding. The University of Athens opens its doors in 1837, one of the first grand neoclassical buildings to be completed. Then comes the Academy, then the National Library. 3 buildings that will one day stand together like a quiet conversation about knowledge and beauty. You pass the university and look up at its painted columns, at the figures carved above the entrance. The colors are still bright in those early years, ochre and blue and terracotta. A little unexpected, perhaps, if you were imagining cold white marble. But the ancient Greeks loved color. This is a city trying to remember that. Inside the new buildings, the air is cool and still. Your footsteps echo on stone floors. There is a hush here that feels deliberate, like the buildings themselves are asking you to slow down, to think, to pay attention. Outside, the city is noisier. Construction never really stops. Carts roll through the new avenues. Workers call to each other across scaffolding. Somewhere nearby, someone is mixing lime and sand, and the sharp, clean smell of it drifts over the rooftops. Athens is growing fast. Not always smoothly. The grand plan meets the reality of a city with very little money, a very small population, and a great deal of ancient rubble to work around. Sometimes the new streets simply stop where an old ruin begins. Sometimes the plan has to bend, but there is something moving about this effort. This small, young nation trying to build itself a face. Trying to say, with stone and mortar and carefully placed columns, that it is here, that it matters, that it remembers. You sit for a moment on the low steps of one of the new buildings. The stone is warm from the afternoon sun. You press your palm flat against it and feel that warmth travel up through your hand. Somewhere above you, a swallow cuts across the sky. The city is not finished yet. It may never be quite finished. But something is stirring here, quiet and determined, beneath all that pale new dust. The taste of dust is still on your lips. It settles there after a long day in the open air, fine and dry, a little chalky. You swallow it without thinking. It is the taste of a city being made, of stone being shaped and streets being widened, and new buildings rising where empty lots used to be. Thessaloniki in 1912 is a city that has just changed hands, and it knows it. For centuries, this place belonged to the Ottoman world. Its streets carried the sounds of Turkish and Ladino and Greek all at once. Its markets smelled of spices brought from far away. Its minarets caught the morning light. And then, in October of 1912, the Greek army arrived. The city was taken without great destruction. There was no long siege, no burning. The gates, in a sense, simply opened. And now the city is learning what it means to be somewhere new. You walk along the waterfront in the early morning. The sea is calm and pale. The light has that soft quality it gets in autumn, when the sun sits lower and everything looks a little golden, a little tired. The water laps quietly against the stone edge of the promenade. You can hear it, a small, steady sound, like someone breathing in their sleep. The city around you is adjusting. You can feel it in the way people move. There is energy here, but it is careful energy. People are watching each other, listening, working out what comes next. The Balkan Wars of 1912 and 1913 were not just military events. They were a reshaping of the map. Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Montenegro had joined together against the Ottoman Empire. They fought quickly, and they won. And when the dust settled, the borders of southeastern Europe looked very different from what they had been before. Thessaloniki, the city the Ottomans called Selanik, became Greek. That was the word used. Became. As if a city could change its nature overnight. But of course it could not. Not really. The people were still here. The buildings were still here. The mosques were still standing. Jewish quarter was still full of life. The same streets curved the same way they always had. The city was the same city, only the flag above it was different. You stop at a small cafe near the old market. You sit down and someone brings you a glass of water and a small cup of thick, dark coffee. You wrap your hands around the glass. The water is cool. The coffee smells sharp and a little sweet. You take a slow sip and let it sit on your tongue for a moment. Around you, people are talking. You catch words in Greek, in Ladino, in Turkish. The city is still speaking in many voices. That has not changed yet. That will take longer. The Greek government is already beginning to make plans. Streets will be renamed. New schools will open. The Orthodox Church will take a more central role. These things happen slowly, but they have already begun. You can feel the intention in the air, like a hand resting gently but firmly on the shoulder of something old. And yet the city does not feel erased. Not yet. It feels layered, like the marble the stonemasons are working, old stone, new shapes. The past is still there underneath. You just have to know how to look. In the Second Balkan War, in the summer of 1913, the alliance that had won together began to fight among itself. Bulgaria turned against its former partners. There was more fighting, more shifting of lines. But Thessaloniki stayed Greek. That much held, and so the city began to settle into its new identity. Slowly, the way a person settles into a new house, moving things around, finding where the light falls in the morning, learning which floorboards creak. You finish your coffee. The cup leaves a small dark ring on the table. You look out at the street. A cart passes, pulled by a horse whose hooves make a soft, rhythmic sound on the stone. A child runs past, laughing at something you cannot see. The city breathes. It has survived another turning point, another moment when everything could have gone differently. And here it is, still standing, still humming with life, still carrying all its old layers into whatever comes next. You lean back in your chair. The morning air is cool and smells faintly of salt from the sea. You close your eyes for just a moment, and you let the city settle around you. The light changes first. You notice it before anything else. The sky over Athens is the same pale blue it has always been. The same soft gold settling over the Acropolis each morning. But something in the streets below feels different. The shadows feel heavier somehow. The people moving through Syntagma Square walk a little faster, eyes forward, not meeting each other's gaze the way they used to. It is the spring of 1941, and the city you have been wandering through for so long is about to change in ways that are hard to put into words. The German forces enter Athens on the 27th of April. You watch from a distance as soldiers move through streets that were full of laughter not so long ago. Their boots are loud on the old stone. That sound, steady, rhythmic, heavy, seems to press down on everything beneath it. The cafes are quieter now. The music has gone somewhere else, somewhere inside, somewhere out of sight. The swastika is raised over the Acropolis. Many Athenians cannot bring themselves to look at it. Some turn away. Some look anyway, and hold that image somewhere deep and private, a wound they carry quietly. The city is under occupation. German, Italian, and Bulgarian forces divide the country between them. Athens falls under German and Italian control, and life, ordinary, daily life, becomes something much harder to navigate. Food is the first thing you feel, or rather, the absence of it. The occupying forces requisition supplies. Grain, olive oil, livestock, all of it funneled away. By the winter of 1941, Athens is in the grip of a famine that is almost impossible to describe. The streets grow very still in a different way now. Not the stillness of rest, the stillness of exhaustion. You walk past a bakery with empty shelves behind the glass. The smell that used to drift out from places like this, warm bread, a little yeast, something toasty and golden, is gone. The air is just cold, just stone and cold, and the faint smell of wood smoke from somewhere far away. Historians estimate that tens of thousands of people die in Athens and the surrounding region during this famine. The numbers are staggering. But what stays with you is the smaller detail. The soup kitchens that appear on street corners, run by volunteers and the Red Cross, where people line up quietly with whatever bowl or pot they can carry. There is something in those lines, a kind of dignity that refuses to disappear even when everything else has been taken. And then there is the resistance. It begins quietly, the way most important things begin. A whisper here, a piece of paper passed between hands in a doorway. The first act of open defiance happens just days after the occupation begins. Two young men, Manolis Glezos and Apostolos Santas, climb the Acropolis in the dark of night and tear down the swastika. They replace it with nothing. Just the empty flagpole and the night, and the stars above Athens that have watched over this hill for thousands of years. You can almost feel the cool air up there, the rough stone under their hands, the silence of the city below holding its breath. That act spreads through Athens like warmth through cold fingers. It does not end the occupation. It does not bring back the food or the safety or the easy mornings. But it says something that words alone could not quite manage. It says, we are still here. Underground newspapers begin to appear, small, printed on thin paper, passed hand to hand with great care. You imagine the feel of one in your palm, fragile, slightly rough, ink that smears just a little at the edges. The words inside are careful and brave at the same time. Networks form. People hide those who are being hunted. Messages travel through the city in ways the occupiers cannot quite trace. Resistance groups organize in the mountains and in the back rooms of ordinary homes. None of this is loud. None of it is easy. The cost is real and terrible for many who are caught. But the city breathes on. Beneath the heavy boots and the empty shelves and the long, hungry winters, something in Athens keeps moving, keeps holding on. The Acropolis stands above it all, as it always has. Pale and patient in the morning light, watching, waiting for whatever comes next. The sound comes first. It is distant, but it is real. A low rumble moving through the streets like something the city has been holding its breath for. You hear it before you understand it. Engines, voices, and then, slowly, something that might be cheering, though it is soft at first, almost uncertain. As if the people making the sound are not quite sure they are allowed to yet. You stand somewhere near an open window. The glass is cracked at one corner. A thin draft moves through the gap, cool against your cheek. And you listen. The rumble grows a little closer, then a little closer still. Outside, the torn flag you noticed before still flutters against the ruined wall. It moves in the same small wind. But somehow it looks different now. Not defeated, just tired. Waiting, maybe, like everything else in this city, to find out what comes next. It is the late summer of 1944. The occupation that pressed down on Amsterdam for 4 long years is lifting. Not all at once. That is not how these things happen. Liberation is not a single moment. It is a slow loosening, like a knot that has been pulled too tight for too long, finally beginning to give. The German forces are withdrawing. The Allied armies are moving through the south of the Netherlands, and the city is holding its breath in a new way now, not from fear, exactly, but from something more fragile than fear. Something closer to hope. And hope, after everything, can feel almost dangerous. You step away from the window and move through a room that smells of old wood and cold ash, a fireplace that has not been lit in a long time. There is a cup on a table, empty, but still faintly warm from someone's hands. You wrap your fingers around it without thinking. The ceramic is smooth, grounding. On the street below, a few people have come outside. Not many. They stand in small clusters, speaking quietly. One woman presses both hands to her mouth. An older man rests his hand on a door frame, as if he needs it to hold him upright. A child runs a few steps ahead, then stops, then looks back, unsure whether running is the right thing to do. The city is hungry. That is the truth underneath all of this. The winter that is coming, what people will later call the hunger winter, has not yet arrived. But the years of occupation have already taken so much. Food has been scarce. Fuel has been scarce. Safety has been scarce. The people you see in the street carry that scarcity in their faces, in the way they move, carefully, conserving. But today there is also something else in their faces. You cannot quite name it. It is not joy, not yet. Joy will come later, in its own time, in its own complicated way. What you see today is quieter than joy. It is the expression of someone who has been told that the worst may be over, and who wants to believe it, but who has learned not to believe things too quickly. The rumble of engines fades a little. The cheering, if that is what it was, settles back into murmur. A pigeon lands on the ledge outside the cracked window, looks around with its small orange eye, and flies away again. You breathe in. The air carries something faintly metallic, the way city air does after rain, or after something has changed. It is not quite clean, but it is different from before. Even the air feels like it is adjusting. A church bell rings somewhere. Just once. Then silence. You think about what it means to rebuild a city, not the buildings, though those too, but the other things. The trust between neighbors, the willingness to walk outside without fear, the small ordinary moments that were taken away and must now, slowly, be learned again. How to sit in a cafe, how to speak freely, how to plan for next week, next month, next year, without the weight of uncertainty pressing down on every thought. None of that happens quickly. None of that happens easily. But it begins. It begins in moments like this one. In the sound of engines moving through streets that have been silent too long. In the woman with her hands pressed to her mouth. In the child who runs a few steps and then stops. In a torn flag against a ruined wall, still fluttering, still here. The city is still here. And that, for now, is enough. The smell of charcoal smoke drifts through the morning air. It mingles with something older, damp stone, river mud, the faint sweetness of steamed rice from a nearby kitchen window. You breathe it in slowly. It is the smell of a city trying to be ordinary again. And for a little while, it almost is. Children's voices still float through the narrow lanes. A ball bounces against a courtyard wall. A grandmother calls out from an upper floor, her words soft and familiar. The streets of Nanjing hold these small sounds carefully, like cupped hands holding water. But something else is in the air too, something harder to name. You notice it first in the way people move. A little faster than before, eyes that glance sideways before settling. Conversations that lower in volume when a stranger passes. The city is breathing again, yes, but it is breathing carefully. It is 1946. The war against Japan is over. The banners have come down. The soldiers who marched through these streets in grey and olive have gone. And yet the quiet that followed is not quite peace. It is more like a pause, a held breath between one storm and whatever comes next. Because China is not at rest. Far to the north, and in the hills beyond the cities, two forces are moving toward each other. The nationalist government, the Kuomintang, holds the cities, the railways, the official seals of power. Chiang Kai-shek's portrait hangs in offices and schools. His government sits here in Nanjing, the capital, behind high walls and wide ceremonial boulevards. But the communist forces under Mao Zedong are moving. Quietly at first, then less quietly. You walk along one of the main streets near the city center. The plane trees are leafing out again, their broad canopy throwing soft patches of shade on the pavement. A vendor sells sesame cakes from a flat basket. You can smell the toasted sesame from several steps away. Warm, nutty, almost comforting. You buy one. It is thin and crisp and leaves a faint oiliness on your fingertips. Everything feels almost normal, but in the government buildings nearby, the mood is different. Papers move quickly from desk to desk. Officials speak in low, clipped voices. There are reports coming in from the countryside, reports of skirmishes, of villages changing hands, of supply lines stretched thin. The civil war between the nationalists and the communists had never truly stopped. Even during the years of Japanese occupation, the two sides had fought together against a common enemy, loosely, uneasily. But that fragile cooperation is gone now, and what remains is old tension, sharpened by years of waiting. You sit for a moment on a low wall near a public garden. The air smells of damp earth and something faintly floral, perhaps a jasmine vine climbing a nearby fence. A sparrow lands close to your feet, tilts its head, then lifts away. Ordinary life continues around you. A woman hangs laundry from a bamboo pole. Two men play chess on a folding table, their pieces clicking softly against the board. A bicycle bell rings somewhere down the lane, and yet you feel it, that faint tremor beneath the surface of things, like a sound just below hearing, like the way the air changes before rain. Nanjing has known this feeling before. This city has been a capital many times, and it has been lost many times. Its walls have seen armies come and go. Its rivers have carried both celebration and grief. The people who live here carry that history in their bodies. Even if they do not speak of it, they know how quickly ordinary mornings can change. For now, the children are still playing. The sesame vendor is still selling his cakes. The plane trees are still making their quiet shade. But somewhere beyond the city, in the red dust of the northern plains and the green hills of the interior, something is shifting. Slowly, steadily, the way a river changes course, not all at once, but grain by grain, until one day the water is somewhere entirely new. You finish your sesame cake. You brush the crumbs from your hands. The morning light is soft and golden on the old city walls. A child runs past you, laughing at something only she can see. You watch her go, and you wonder, quietly, what this city will look like when the next season turns. The air has gone still now. You reach out and touch the wall beside you. Rough plaster, a little cool, a little damp. It has been here through everything, through the years of fear and the years of quiet and all the years in between. And somehow it is still standing. So are you. This is Vienna in the early 1950s, and the city is learning, slowly and carefully, how to begin again. It is not a dramatic beginning. That is the thing people sometimes forget. Recovery does not arrive like a trumpet call. It arrives like a morning. Gradual. A little grey at first. Then, bit by bit, the light comes through. You walk along a street in the inner city, and you notice the scaffolding. It is everywhere. Wooden poles lashed together with rope, rising up the sides of buildings that need mending. You run your hand along the base of one as you pass. The wood is rough and slightly splintered. Workers have been climbing this all week. You can feel where their hands have worn it smooth in certain places. There is the smell of fresh mortar in the air. Chalky and mineral. It mixes with the smell of bread from a bakery somewhere nearby, and the two smells together feel like something, like effort and comfort existing side by side. Austria signed its state treaty in 1955, ending the post-war occupation. But even before that, the rebuilding had already begun. The Marshall Plan had brought money and materials. American aid had helped restart factories, repair infrastructure, restore some of what the war had taken. You can feel the effects of that in small ways. A tram line that runs again. A shop window that is full instead of empty. A child eating something sweet, not thinking twice about it. The tram passes you now, and you feel the faint vibration of it through the soles of your shoes. The tracks are old, but they are clean. The tram is painted red, and it moves with a kind of steady confidence that feels new. Or maybe not new, maybe just remembered. Vienna in the 1950s is a city of contrasts. Some streets are almost entirely restored. Others still carry the marks of the war. A gap where a building used to be. A wall with scorched shadows still faintly visible. You pass one of those gaps now. Someone has planted a small garden in it. Tomatoes, a few sunflowers. The sunflowers are tall and a little ragged, turning their faces toward the afternoon light. You stop for a moment and look at them. There is something in that small garden that says more than any official announcement could. People are not just repairing what was broken. They are planting things. They are thinking about the future. That is a different kind of courage, quieter than the courage of survival, but just as real. You find a cafe and step inside. The floor is tiled in black and white, worn smooth by decades of feet. You sit down at a small table near the window. The seat is wooden and slightly hard, but it is good to sit. The waiter brings coffee without being asked. You must look like someone who needs it. The cup is small and white, and the coffee is dark and strong. You wrap both hands around it, even though it is not cold. It just feels right. Outside the window, the city moves past. A woman with a shopping bag. Two men in work clothes talking with their hands. A boy on a bicycle, weaving between people with total confidence. Life going on, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Austria's economy will grow steadily through this decade. The word Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle, is beginning to take shape, not just in West Germany, but here too. New industries, new housing, a slow but real rise in living standards. You can feel it in the mood of the street. Not euphoric, not quite, but lighter than before, more forward-facing. You take a sip of your coffee. It is bitter and warm and grounding. Exactly what this moment calls for. The city outside is not finished. It may never be entirely finished. Cities rarely are. But it is moving. It is reaching. It is planting sunflowers in the gaps where buildings used to be, and it is running trams on repaired tracks, and it is making coffee for strangers in the afternoon light. And that, you think, as you set down your cup and feel the quiet settle around you like a soft coat, is enough. For now, it is more than enough. The taste of strong coffee sits on your tongue, bitter, a little burnt, the kind of coffee that Athenians have been drinking for centuries, thick, dark, settled at the bottom of a small cup. You hold it in both hands, even though the day is already warm. There is something grounding about that, something that doesn't change, no matter what else does. And in the spring of 1967, a great deal changes. You are sitting at a small cafe table somewhere in Athens. The chairs are metal, slightly uneven on the old pavement. The street around you looks the same as it always has. The same pale buildings, the same cats moving through the shade, the same smell of exhaust and jasmine drifting together in the morning air. But something is different. You can feel it before you can name it. A kind of stillness that doesn't belong to the hour. In the early morning of the 21st of April, tanks move through the streets of Athens. You don't see them at first. You hear them. A low, grinding rumble that travels through the ground before it reaches your ears. It moves through the soles of your shoes, up through the legs of your chair. You put your coffee cup down. Around you, people go quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of a sleepy morning. A different kind. Held breath. Eyes that don't quite meet. The Greek military has seized control of the government. A group of army officers, colonels, mostly, have taken power in a coup. They move quickly and with careful planning. Radio stations fall silent, then return with military music. Phone lines are cut. Politicians are arrested before dawn. By the time the sun is fully up over the Acropolis, the old government is gone. The junta, as it comes to be known, wraps itself in the language of order and patriotism. It speaks of saving Greece from communism, from chaos, from itself. It hangs flags. It makes announcements. It tells people that everything will be fine, that this is necessary, that they should go about their lives. But Athens is a city with a long memory, and its people are not easily fooled. In the days that follow, you notice the small ways that fear moves through the city. People lower their voices in cafes. They glance toward the door before they speak. Books disappear from shelves. Certain authors, certain ideas, quietly removed. Music that the regime dislikes is banned. Mikis Theodorakis, the composer whose melodies have filled Greek streets and hearts for years, is forbidden. His records cannot be played. His name cannot be spoken in public. And yet, you walk through Exarchia one evening, that neighborhood of students and artists tucked into the city's northern center. The streets are narrow here, and the walls are old. Someone has written something on a corner wall, just a few words, half scrubbed away, but still visible if you look. You stop. You read it quietly to yourself. It says nothing dangerous on the surface, but you understand what it means. And so does everyone who passes it. Resistance doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. In the years that follow, resistance takes many forms. Some people leave Greece entirely. Writers, musicians, intellectuals who cannot work freely under the regime. Others stay and find quieter ways to push back. A poem passed hand to hand. A song hummed under the breath. A gathering that looks like a dinner party, but is something more. The regime tries to control what Athens looks like, what it sounds like, what it thinks. It builds things, roads, buildings, infrastructure, as if concrete can substitute for freedom. And in some ways, the city does grow during these years. New neighborhoods spread outward. Cars fill streets that were once quiet. A kind of surface prosperity settles over parts of the city, but underneath, something is coiling. Something patient and determined. You finish your coffee. The grounds have settled at the bottom, dark and dense. In the old tradition, some people read fortunes in those grounds, tipping the cup, letting the shape speak. You don't need to tip yours. You already know that the shape of these years is not finished. That what is compressed will eventually expand. That a city like Athens, which has outlasted empires and invasions and centuries of change, will not stay silent forever. The afternoon light falls warm across the pavement. Somewhere nearby, a child laughs. A window shutter swings open. The smell of something baking drifts down from an upper floor. The city breathes. Quietly. Carefully. But it breathes. The light is different in the morning after a long night of talking. You notice it first through a smudged window, that pale, watery January light that seems to arrive apologetically, as if it knows it is interrupting something. Athens in early 1981 feels like a city blinking awake after a very long sleep. The streets are the same streets. The same cats pick their way along the same warm stone walls. But something in the air has shifted, just slightly. The way a room feels different after someone has opened a window you forgot was there. Greece has joined the European community. The 10th member. The date was the 1st of January. And the paperwork and the ceremonies happened in Brussels, far from here, in rooms with long tables and careful lighting. But the effects of it, the meaning of it, those are landing here now, slowly, the way snow lands. Quietly. One flake at a time, you walk through the central market in the morning, and the smell is the same as it has always been. Fish and parsley, and something faintly metallic from the wet stone floors. The vendors call out the same way they always have. A woman hands you a small piece of orange, just a gesture, just kindness. The taste is sharp and sweet and very real. Whatever is happening in the world of treaties and trade agreements, this orange exists. This cold morning exists. The city exists. But people are talking. You hear it at the coffee house, where the cups arrive small and dark, and the grounds settle slowly at the bottom. Old men sit with their worry beads and speak in low voices. Some of them are cautious. Some of them are quietly proud. Greece, they say, has come back to something. After the dictatorship, after the years of isolation and fear, after the exile and the silence, There is a sense that the country has been welcomed back into a larger family. Not without argument, not without doubt, but welcomed. The dissidents who shared that bitter wine the night before, you think of them now. Some of them spent years outside of Greece, in Paris, in London, in small apartments with thin walls, and the particular loneliness of people who love a place they cannot go back to. They watched their country from a distance. They argued about it in borrowed kitchens. They wrote letters that sometimes arrived and sometimes did not. And now the country they dreamed about is doing something they did not entirely expect. It is signing its name to Europe. Not everyone feels the same way about this. You understand that, sitting here with your coffee. There are people who worry about what is lost when a small country ties itself to something much larger. There are farmers in the countryside who are not sure what the new rules will mean for their olives, their grapes, their careful rhythms. There are voices on the left who distrust the whole arrangement, who see in it the long arm of capital, of power dressed in polite language. These are not small concerns. They are real, and they sit alongside the hope, the way shadows sit alongside light, not cancelling it, just giving it shape. What you feel, sitting here, is something more modest than triumph. It is more like relief, the slow, tired relief of a long argument that has not been resolved, but has at least moved into a different room. Greece is part of something now. The borders are the same borders. The mountains are the same mountains. The sea is still the same impossible blue that has always made people want to write poems. But the country has a new relationship with the world around it. And that relationship will take years, decades, to understand fully. The coffee cup is almost empty. The grounds have settled into a dark shape at the bottom. And if you believed in such things, you might try to read them. But you don't need to. The morning is enough. The light coming through the window is enough. The sound of the city waking up around you, the trams, the voices, the distant clatter of a shutter being opened, all of it is enough. Greece has stepped through a door. Where that door leads, no one can say with certainty, but the stepping through, the act of it, the courage, or the hope, or the simple exhaustion that made it possible, that is something worth sitting with for a moment, quietly, with both hands around a warm cup. Letting the morning settle around you like a blanket, letting the city breathe. The sound reaches you before anything else. It is a low, collective hum. Thousands of voices, not quite talking, not quite singing, just breathing together in the warm August night. You are standing somewhere near the Panathenaic Stadium, and the air around you is thick with anticipation. It presses gently against your skin like a second layer of clothing. Athens in the summer of 2004 is loud in a way that feels almost alive. Somewhere nearby, a radio is playing. The signal drifts in and out, carrying a commentator's voice in Greek. Then a burst of music, then static. Children are laughing. A vendor is calling out something you cannot quite make out. And underneath all of it, that hum continues. That deep, patient sound of a city holding its breath. You have heard that Athens almost did not make it here. The preparations were slow. There were years of worry, of headlines asking whether the stadiums would be finished in time, whether the roads would be ready, whether this ancient city could truly carry the weight of the modern world's attention. And yet, here you are. The city made it. Just in time, and just enough. You walk a little closer to the old stadium, the one built from white marble. You reach out and touch the stone of a nearby wall. It is still warm from the day's sun, smooth and solid under your fingers. This stone has known other footsteps, other games, other crowds. It remembers something you are only beginning to feel. The Panathenaic Stadium was rebuilt in the 1890s for the very first modern Olympic Games. Athens hosted those games in 1896. And now, more than 100 years later, the games have come home again. That word keeps appearing in everything you read, everything you hear. Home, as if the Olympics have been traveling all this time, moving from city to city across the decades, and now they have finally returned to the place where the modern story began. The smell of grilled meat drifts past you from somewhere to your left. Souvlaki, maybe. The fat and herbs of it are warm and familiar, even if you have never been here before. There is something about the smell of food cooking outdoors at night that makes any city feel welcoming. You sit down on a low step and look up. The sky above Athens is a deep, soft blue. Not quite black yet. The kind of blue that holds the last memory of daylight. And in that sky, you can just make out a few stars, beginning to appear, cautious and small. Greece spent years and enormous effort preparing for this moment. New metro lines were built beneath the city. Roads were widened. Venues were constructed across Athens and in other parts of the country. The sailing events would take place near Piraeus, the ancient port. The marathon would follow a route close to the legendary original, from the town of Marathon to the city itself. That route matters here. It is not just a race. It is a thread connecting something very old to something very new. You think about the athletes arriving from every corner of the world, more than 200 countries sending their best. Languages you have never heard spoken aloud. Flags you might not immediately recognize. And yet all of them arriving in this one city, in this one August, because of something that started here, in this place, long ago. The European flags you noticed earlier are still there, rippling gently beside the Greek one. But now you see more flags too, dozens of them, strung between lampposts along the street. They move softly in the evening breeze, each one catching a little of the light from below. There is something quietly moving about that sight. All those different colors, all those different symbols, all of them moving together in the same warm wind. You close your eyes for a moment and just listen. The hum is still there. The radio drifts back in, carrying a few notes of music before fading again. Someone nearby is speaking softly in a language you do not know, and their voice is gentle and low. Athens has carried so much history for so long, layer upon layer of it, pressed into the stone and the soil and the air itself. And now it is carrying something else too. Something lighter, maybe. Something that smells like grilled meat and sounds like 1,000 quiet voices and feels, under your hand, like warm marble that has been waiting a very long time for this particular evening. The smell of rain on warm concrete drifts through the open window. It is that particular smell, earthy, a little metallic, a little sweet, that cities carry after a summer storm. You breathe it in slowly. The night air has cooled just enough to notice. The Olympic flame is gone now. The stadiums are quiet, and the city, for a moment, simply breathes. But the world outside does not stay quiet for long. In the autumn of 2008, something shifts. You can feel it before you can name it. It is in the way people pause at shop windows without going in. It is in the way conversations drop lower, more careful. Banks in distant cities have begun to fail, and the tremors travel far and fast. Beijing is not untouched. No city is. Construction slows on the edges of town. The cranes that once seemed to never stop, they stop. Factories in the southern districts cut hours. Workers who had come from the countryside, who had built their lives on the steady rhythm of work, find that rhythm interrupted. Some pack their bags, some wait, some simply sit with the uncertainty, the way you sit with it now, quietly, in the dark. The air in the markets changes too. You notice it when you walk through. The vendors are still there. The smell of roasting chestnuts still drifts from the corner stall, warm, a little smoky, catching in the back of your throat. But there is a carefulness to the transactions, a counting of coins that feels more deliberate than before. And yet, this is a city that has known harder things, much harder things. The government moves quickly. Stimulus packages are announced. Infrastructure investment pours into roads, railways, the long bones of the country. The high-speed rail network begins to stretch outward from Beijing like roots finding water. You can hear the trains in the distance sometimes, a low hum beneath the city's surface, a kind of determined forward motion. By 2009, growth returns, not the same as before perhaps, but real, steady. And something else grows too, something quieter and harder to measure. People begin to talk more openly about the shape of their city, about the old neighborhoods that were cleared for the Olympics, about the hutongs, those narrow, winding lanes of courtyard homes that had been disappearing for decades. You can still find them if you know where to look. You can still walk down a lane where the stones are uneven underfoot, where the walls are old grey brick, where a cat sleeps in a patch of afternoon sun and does not move when you pass. There is a smell in those lanes too. Old wood, dust, the faint trace of coal smoke from a winter long ago. It settles on you like something remembered rather than experienced. Young people begin to photograph these places. Artists move in. Cafes open in courtyard spaces, small and warm, with mismatched chairs and the smell of coffee mixing with the older smell of the place. It is a kind of conversation between what was and what is becoming. The years between 2008 and 2015 are not simple years. No years ever are. There is pollution that some winters turns the sky a thick, milky white. You can taste it faintly on your lips if you stand outside too long. The city begins to talk about this openly. The air quality index becomes a daily number that people check the way they check the weather. Masks appear on faces. Policies begin to shift. There is a restlessness in these years, a searching. Young people moving to Beijing from every province, carrying ambitions in their bags alongside their clothes. The subway system grows and grows, new lines opening, new stations, new crowds pressing together in the warm underground air, the smell of 1,000 different journeys mixing into one. And through all of it, the city holds. Not perfectly, not without loss, but it holds. You think about resilience, what it actually feels like from the inside. It does not feel like strength exactly. It feels more like this, like keeping the window open even when the air is uncertain, like the smell of rain returning after a long dry stretch, like the small stall on the corner still roasting chestnuts, still sending that warm smoke into the evening air, as if to say, we are still here. The city settles around you now. The sounds soften. A bicycle bell somewhere, distant and clear. The rustle of leaves in a courtyard you cannot see. You let your breath slow with it. Still here. You reach out and touch the warm stone of an old wall. It is rough beneath your fingertips, pitted and worn smooth in some places by centuries of hands just like yours. The wall belongs to a building that has stood here longer than anyone can remember, and right beside it, bolted neatly into the ancient mortar, is a small black box, a Wi-Fi router. Its tiny green light blinks quietly in the afternoon shade. This is Athens in the mid-2010s, and something new is happening here. You are still close to the street food vendors. You can smell the warm oil and oregano drifting from a nearby corner. Someone is pressing spanakopita onto a paper napkin and handing it to a young man who is already looking back down at his phone. He types something quickly, sends it, pockets the phone, takes a bite, moves on. That small moment tells you a great deal. Athens has been through something very hard. The years of the financial crisis left deep marks. You could feel them in the quieter shops, the peeling paint, the careful way people counted their change. But the city did not stop thinking. It did not stop making things. And somewhere in the middle of all that difficulty, something quietly began to grow. People started building companies here, small ones at first. A few desks in a rented room, a whiteboard covered in diagrams, laptops open on kitchen tables late into the night. The startup scene in Athens was finding its feet, slowly, carefully, the way a plant finds light through a crack in the pavement. You walk a little further, and you find a co-working space tucked into a neoclassical building on a narrow street. The door is open. You can hear the soft tapping of keyboards inside. Someone laughs quietly at something on a screen. The air smells faintly of coffee and warm electronics. There are young people here from many different countries. Some are Greek. Some have come from elsewhere in Europe, drawn by the lower cost of living and the particular energy that Athens carries. Because Athens has always had a kind of energy. You can feel it even now. It is something between restlessness and deep-rootedness. The city has seen so much. It does not panic easily, and that steadiness, that long memory, gives the people here a certain kind of patience. They know how to wait. They know how to endure. And they know how to begin again. The Greek government began to take notice of what was growing. Policies shifted slowly to support new businesses. Co-working hubs opened across the city. Incubators and accelerators began to appear. Not all of them thrived. Some closed quietly, but others found their footing and began to attract attention from investors across Europe. You step outside again and stand for a moment on the pavement. The Acropolis is visible from here, as it almost always is in Athens. That pale limestone catching the late afternoon light. It has been watching this city change for a very long time. You wonder what it makes of the Wi-Fi routers and the laptops, and the young founders sending pitch decks from their phones. But perhaps that is the wrong way to think about it. Perhaps the Acropolis is not watching in surprise at all. Perhaps it recognizes something familiar. Because Athens has always been a place where people came to think, to argue, to build ideas. The tools change. The questions remain. You find a low step near a small square and sit for a moment. Someone nearby is playing music very softly from a phone speaker. A gentle, unhurried melody. Children are chasing a dog around a fountain that is not running. An old man reads a newspaper, though the edges are curling in the warm breeze. And across the square, through a ground floor window, you can see a young woman at a standing desk. She is presenting something on a video call. Her hands move expressively as she speaks. She smiles at something the screen says back to her. She is building something, right here, in this ancient city, between the old walls and the bougainvillea and the smell of coffee and the sound of church bells that still ring on the hour. Athens has always known how to hold two things at once. The very old and the very new. The weight of history and the lightness of possibility. You sit a little longer. The afternoon is warm. The city hums around you. And somewhere just beneath the surface of all this ordinary life, Something is quietly taking shape. The coffee is strong and a little sweet. That's how they make it here. You lift the small cup, ceramic, warm against your palm, and the first sip settles on your tongue like something familiar, bitter, then smooth, then gone. You take another. There is no hurry. There never really is, in a city that has learned to take its time. You are sitting outside, somewhere in the old neighborhoods below the Acropolis. Maybe Monastiraki, maybe Kukaki. The streets here are narrow, and the chairs are close together, and someone nearby is laughing softly at something on their phone. The air smells of roasting nuts from a cart a little further down the lane, and underneath that, something older, stone, perhaps, or the particular dryness of a warm Athenian evening. The screens are still glowing all around you. They always are now in 2026. Menus on tablets, maps on wrists, conversations happening in 2 languages at once, sometimes 3. Athens has always been a city of voices layered on top of each other. That part has not changed. What has changed is the speed, the ease, the way a young architect can pull up a 3-dimensional model of a proposed building and hold it next to a photograph of the same street from 1920, comparing them side by side with a gentle pinch of 2 fingers. The city is thinking about itself constantly. That is what you notice most. There are conversations happening in universities, in neighborhood councils, in small offices tucked behind neoclassical facades about what Athens should become. How to keep the old stones breathing while the new city grows around them. How to welcome the people who arrive. And people do arrive from everywhere without losing the particular texture of the place. It is not a simple conversation. It never has been. Athens has always been a city in argument with itself, and that is part of what makes it alive. You finish your coffee and set the cup down. The grounds settle at the bottom in a dark swirl. Some people here still rate them, still turn the cup upside down, and wait for the future to reveal itself in the dried patterns. You smile at that. Old habits and new screens, sitting comfortably side by side. A cat appears from somewhere and sits near your feet. It looks at you with complete indifference, which is very Athenian. You reach down, and it allows itself to be touched for exactly 1 moment before walking away with great dignity. Above you, the Parthenon is lit in soft gold. You can see it from almost anywhere in the city if you look up at the right angle. It has been there for 2,500 years, watching the city change beneath it, watching the agora fill and empty, watching the Romans arrive, and the Byzantines, and the Ottomans, and the newly independent Greeks, and the tourists, and the students, and the refugees, and the architects, and the dreamers, all of them walking the same streets, breathing the same dry air, looking up at the same pale stone. And now you, sitting here in 2026, with a small empty coffee cup, and the sound of the city moving gently around you. There is something very quiet about this moment, not silent. Athens is never truly silent. There are motorbikes somewhere. There is music from an open window. There is the low murmur of a television inside the cafe behind you. But underneath all of that, there is a stillness, the kind that comes from being in a place that has held so much, for so long, that it has learned how to carry weight without showing the strain. Athens is not a museum. That is the thing you keep coming back to. It is not preserved behind glass. It breathes. It argues. It builds and tears down and builds again. It mourns what it loses and celebrates what it keeps. It is full of young people who were born here and old people who arrived from somewhere else, and everyone in between, all of them making something together, even when they disagree about what that something should be. The lights on the hill glow on, the city hums, and you sit for a little while longer, letting the warmth of the evening settle around you like something you could almost hold. This city has been many things across its long life. Tonight, in this small moment, it is simply here. Still standing, still speaking, still, in its own unhurried way, becoming.